Good morning, everyone. I am Montgomery County Council President Gabe Albornoz, and it is a pleasure to be with all of you on Tuesday, March 22nd, for our full council agenda. We are going to begin today with presentations and proclamations and reverse the order a little bit, and so we will be starting with item number B, which is a proclamation recognizing United Therapeutics for their conversion to a public benefit corporation. This will be presented by Council Member Reamer. Councilmember Reamer?
Good morning, everyone. Is this working right? Okay. I am really honored to be able to share a proclamation today for a company that makes us proud here in Montgomery County, really beyond our ability to capture that in words. United Therapeutics is a company that was founded through a mother's love for her daughter and a pioneering entrepreneur who knew that there was a cure, or at least there was a therapy, I should say, that could be found. And she sought that out, and she took that therapy. She took a molecule to trial, took a trial through the process, and built a company that today is leading scientific miracles. You heard recently about the success of United Therapeutics with a lung transplant, and you may explain that a little further. But initial success, and this company, because there is no cure for pulmonary hypertension, lung transplants are the only cure, is my understanding. And so this company has decided that rather than allow a disease to be uncured, that it will invent new ways to transplant organs. And that is happening in downtown Silver Spring. Here at the council, we get to do the essential, although seemingly mundane task of conforming the zoning code to the needs of scientific breakthroughs by allowing buildings to be developed that have the right floor plates and ceiling heights and so forth. But that's our role in the process, and we're proud to play it. So we have with us Paul Mahone and Stedman and Rob Breslaw, and we're so grateful for the service of this company. And I will now invite Paul to share some reflections. Thank you.
Hans, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank the Academy for this award. You love me. You really love me. All right, well, that's Sunday. Sorry, that's Sunday. I'm getting ahead of myself. But we're thrilled to be here. We're absolutely thrilled to be here for lots of reasons. One, can we just pause on the fact that we're live? People, you can see me, not the Zoom issues. We've got people live for the business of the people happening. So this is very exciting to be back. Let me introduce my colleagues with me. So we heard about Dewey Stedman, who runs investor relations and also communications. And we also have Rob Breslaw, who's one of the rock stars in our commercial real estate group. So we're thrilled to be here. I would say, I guess there's like two reasons, right? One is, yes, we're a public benefit corporation. But 27 years ago, when I faxed the articles of incorporation for UT, from my little fax machine, which I still have, for the museum, we chose Montgomery County, right? It's a choice. Where are you going to start? Well, you go anywhere. We went here. And why? Because we knew that all of the conditions that would make us successful were here. That everything we needed to be successful was here. Sure, you have to work hard, you have to have some luck, you got to do lots of things. But the conditions you need to be successful were right here. And we've become successful because of it. 27 years in June, we've now got 5 FDA approvals. We have 7 phase 3 trials going on. And, as Hans mentioned, we're also pursuing the manufacture of organs to create an unlimited supply of transplantable, tolerable organs. And not when you're very, very sick or very sick and on a list and you fall off a list, but when you need them. And we're making great progress. And there's no engineering laws that need to be, discovered or workarounds. It's all known. The science is known, and it really is just an engineering challenge. But we're going to do this in Silver Spring. You mentioned the porcine lung, which was University of Maryland Medical Center, put one of our lungs in Dave Bennett from Hagerstown. And 60 days he lived when he was very, very sick. The FDA on New Year's Eve said, go ahead and give it a go. But he was so sick, but it worked for 60 days, and we got lots of great data, and that's what he wanted to happen. But pigs aren't the answer. The best answer is 3D printing an organ with your own cells. And the excitement there is a human-to-human transplant needs immunosuppression. A pig-to-human transplant, where the genes have been modified, needs immunosuppression to not be rejected. The body says, that's foreign, get out of here. So you have to work on that issue, and science has made great strides. But using your own cells to make organs, which we're doing, no immunosuppression at all. So you don't trade one disease for another. And we're doing that in Montgomery County. And this county, from top to bottom, left to right, 360 has been so supportive of, what are science fiction ideas? What are big challenges? What are things that have never been done before? And this county's willing to say, go. How can we support you? And that's a big difference, and that validates everything, which is why I'm thrilled. And one of our FDA approvals, for example, is for neuroblastoma. It's the deadliest pediatric cancer. So 600 babies and small kids get this disease. For 600 patients, that's it, in the U.S., our drug will save the lives of 50% of them, save their lives. And that's what's important, and we're doing that in Silver Spring, too, where we make unitoxin. So when we converted to a public benefit corporation from a C corporation, that means for the first time we're legally required to run our company for all of the stakeholders interested in our company's welfare and impact, and not just our owners, the shareholders, not just our financial owners. And so we take that very seriously. We think about the environment as a stakeholder. And when we do, we think about sustainability and how Montgomery County supported our effort to build the world's largest net zero building in Silver Spring. Produces on-site all the energy it uses, and it also is a functioning laboratory and office building. We were able to do that here because of that commitment. But also employees, right? Employees are stakeholders as well. And so we definitely want to encourage, an exuberant, diverse group of Unitharians, as we call our employees. Culture is everything. The culture of an organization is everything. There's the old line, culture eats strategy for breakfast. No, it doesn't eat it for breakfast. It eats it all the time. Culture is everything. And so we try to instill in our employees in downtown Silver Spring, with all the amenities of the community, innovation, enthusiasm, creativity. And we're able to build a wonderful group of people who believe in that. And so we're thrilled that we can be a PBC, the first biotech or pharma in America to convert publicly traded, to be a publicly traded PBC. Our shareholders voted against their own interests to say, yes, that's the right thing for this company to do. And we're thrilled about that. This moment right now is wonderful. A proclamation, thank you. This time we're in is exciting. Things are happening. Things are happening in really exciting ways. And this county, which is embracing that opportunity, right? Embracing that opportunity to bring the public benefit that we're doing with our company to the ultimate public benefit of residents of Montgomery County. So the second reason I'm thrilled is basically recognizing that we're in the room where it happens right now. This is the room where it happens. The room where it happens. I don't want to pay any royalties. If you have an there we go. See, the ASCAP license, either that or my singing has broken every light in the place. I want the record. But we are in the room.
Wait a second. Let's pause.
You want to pause? I think it's through. Spotlight, please. Where's my spot? Come on, it was in the contract, you guys. Boom. There'd be light. Oh, it works. It works. No, it's not a zero. Either that or my time's up, and I think that's a very subtle way to say, intermission. Usually there's a little yellow light or something, but it's just very clear, not passive aggressive. But just to finish, we're in the room where it happens, which is to say, this council is as innovative with what it's doing as we're doing with the crazy science ideas and the ways to reduce suffering and save lives. This county is doing with legislation, all right? Just last month, the BioHealth Priority Headquarters legislation, this is a game changer. This is a game changer nationally and internationally for this county. It will invite companies like us with great jobs, interested in helping patients and building the stakeholders in the community as well. So I think that's a wonderful thing. And then just last week, we had the BioHealth, the credit system. Why am I blanking on the name? Assistant, the
move incentive.
Yes. So we have incentives for companies to come and enjoy the BioHealth Priority Headquarters benefits from last month. These are two huge things that have just happened, and they're trembling the earth with excitement over what's going to happen. I have no doubt this is going to be wildly successful, and I'm very proud to be part of the community here with a council that understands what it needs to do to balance everybody, to represent all stakeholders, and to build for the future in a sustainable way. So thank you very much. Do I get that proclamation?
Yes,
or is that...
yes. Well,
okay.
Yes. Well, first of all,
I got to bring something home.
Yes. We're just so grateful for you and the leadership of your company, Martine, and your amazing team. And it's just, we're grateful that you're here, and we're going to do everything we can to support you. Montgomery County is behind you 110%, your company, and we will work with you to save lives. So I'm reading the proclamation, which is, again, recognizing the company for its commitment to become a public benefit corporation. Whereas, founded in 1996 by Martine Rothblatt in Silver Spring, United Therapeutics' mission has been to find a cure for pulmonary arterial hypertension and other life-threatening diseases. Toward this goal, United Therapeutics has successfully gained FDA approval for 5 medicines, is conducting new clinical trials, and is working to create an unlimited supply of manufactured organs for transplantation. And whereas United Therapeutics converted to a public benefit corporation following a 2021 vote of its shareholders, making United Therapeutics the first and only publicly traded biotech or pharmaceutical company to take the form of a PBC. And whereas PBCs are intended to produce public benefits and to operate in a responsible and sustainable manner, and whereas United Therapeutics' public benefit purpose is to provide a brighter future for patients through the development of novel pharmaceutical therapies and technologies that expand the availability of transplantable organs, which United Therapeutics will pursue while providing shareholders with superior financial performance and its communities with earth-sensitive energy utilization. And whereas United Therapeutics' ongoing commitment to sustainability is evidenced by the 2018 opening of its Unisphere on the company's campus in Silver Spring, the world's largest net zero commercial building that renewably generates electrical and thermal energy on site with no carbon footprint. And whereas United Therapeutics' commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a core attribute since its founding, with 5 of its 12 directors identifying as female, 3 as underrepresented minorities, and 1 as a member of the LGBTQ community. Moreover, 47% of its management team identify as female and 29% as racial or ethnic minorities. And whereas United Therapeutics' commitment to its 950 employees located in its Silver Spring co-headquarters and around the world is demonstrated through its market-leading employee benefits and culture of inclusion that encourages irreverent creativity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby congratulates United Therapeutics for its conversion to a public benefit corporation presented today and signed by the Council President and myself. Thank you so much. Hans. Okay.
All right, congratulations. That was a great way to start the day. And the cue of the lights was perfect timing. We now move on to, we're going to go back to item A, which is a proclamation recognizing National Agriculture Day by Council Members Rice, Navarro, and Friedson.
Yeah, if you guys could come on up. As I'm joined by all of our agricultural partners, I want to highlight, while all of them are important who are joining us, and come on around, one of the most important is young Lucy here. And I mean that. The reason why is because if we're serious about food sustainability, about food resilience, about making sure that we can address hunger in the United States of America, it's going to go and fall to our future generations and young people like Lucy who understand the importance of making sure that food, making sure that hunger is addressed, making sure that we can continue to have farming throughout not only this region, but across this country and across this world. We've seen in many jurisdictions across the world to where agriculture is highlighted as a key economic development driver. And I think that unfortunately in our region, we don't always give credit about the great things that happen as a result of investing in farming and what it means for individuals to ensure that we can have healthy and affordable food for individuals. You just heard UTI and talking about health. Well, part of health is nutrition. As we talk about prescriptions that now phase out from just drugs to prescription for healthy food as a part of your ability to be able to deal with some of the diseases that folks are stricken with. And we've seen that all too heightened as a part of the COVID pandemic, where we saw communities of color, communities of lower socioeconomic status, who were impacted heavily by COVID because of their pre-existing conditions like diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure. We know that we can actually solve this. And a key way in which we can solve this is by working with our farm partners, working with our nonprofits like MANA, Capital Area Food Bank, and others who continue to take that food from our farmers and give them to the folks in our community who need it the most. We have a system here in Montgomery County that works. And as you heard from UTI, Montgomery County is very unique because we are committed. We are committed to not just allowing the fact that we have things that stand in our way, that keep us from getting to our ultimate goal of addressing some of the issues, to actually standing up and saying we're going to make a difference and make things happen that will change the paradigm. And it's not just for us, but we are setting an example for the rest of the nation as well. And so I just really want to say a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you, because during the pandemic, each of you stood up when it came to creating the Farm to Food Bank and the initiatives that are there, Heather Bruskin and others, who all came together with our Food Council and said, how can we address the issues that were there? And a big shout out, we'll hear from Joan Kleiman later, but you know, sometimes things happen for a reason. One of my first calls was to Senator Chris Van Hollen, and Joan knows all too well. I reached out to their office about ensuring that we had food sustainability for our kids and that we needed a USDA waiver. And who more so than a powerful member of the Senate Appropriations Committee could make that happen. And we saw that shepherded through Congress just weeks after we shut down our schools and the pandemic was upon us in full height. So we do what we need to make a difference in our community. And I just really want to say again, thank you to our partners who made that happen. We saved lives, and we also set a new direction, a new course for how we're addressing food insecurity and sustainability here in Montgomery County. So I did just want to say one last thing about the Agricultural Reserve, because many people don't understand how big and how committed we are here in Montgomery County. 93,000 acres. It was back in 1977 that I think folks got together and met when they were really talking about formulating the Agricultural Reserve, and I think it was in 1980 that we actually formalized it in law. And since then, there's been a zoning commitment to say that although we have valued land here in Montgomery County, we need to do our part in ensuring that we can contribute to the overall goal of promoting food sustainability and resiliency in this region and in this country. And it's interesting because we just had a tour. Thank you very much to Jeremy Chris in his office for helping to assist us with that, with Prince George's County, who now is looking to do the same thing in terms of commitment that Montgomery County has done in committing land, downzoning this, and making sure that it's there for agriculture use for future generations. We are setting the example. We are making a difference. And each of you are certainly owed a debt of gratitude for that. And I just want to close with one last thing. The White House sees this as well. The federal government, I know that Senator McGovern and others have been very passionate about this issue and making sure that we can promote food, nutrition, trying to stave off hunger. And so there's going to be a White House summit later on this fall. I'm looking forward to being a part of that in making sure that we can continue to promote some of the great things that we're seeing across this country and how we can address hunger and food resiliency. And I will be sure to make sure that I'm highlighting the great efforts that I've seen from all of our county partners who have worked with us to make sure that we're doing our part. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. While we all own the Ag Reserve, every single one of us, we have 3 district council members whose districts encompass the Ag Reserve. And so I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Friedson and Councilmember Navarro to say a few words before we get into some of the presentations from some of our partners, and I'll do some introductions. So Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here. We used to start these meetings at 9:30. We moved it to 9. So when we told our farm partners we're moving it first thing in the morning to 9 a.m., Lonnie and Linda and others said, where we come from, we call that midday. Just to be clear, after a full day's work, they joined us here, which we appreciate. But it is such a privilege to be here. We heard earlier from United Therapeutics, and in many ways, biohealth, when it comes to science, when it comes to innovation, is the new frontier. But agriculture is the original frontier when it comes to science, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to cultivation, to use science to help improve people's lives. And our farmers are doing that every day, and it has come to have new meaning during the pandemic when our nonprofit partners and our farmers joined together to say, how do we address the fact that 1 in 3 Marylanders don't know where their next meal is going to come from, aren't food secure? That starts with where our food is grown. And in Montgomery County, we made, as you heard from Craig Rice, this important decision, the single most important land conservation decision anywhere in the United States of America. That seed was planted in 1964, as you heard from Craig. In 1977, it was worked through to figure out how we were actually going to make this revolutionary thing happen. And in 1980, we said 1/3 of the county's land mass is going to be preserved for agriculture. And the fruit of that labor and the families who are actually doing that labor, many of whom are here today, has benefited us from the decades since and will benefit us from the decades that follow. And during the pandemic, it allowed us to have these incredible programs like the Farm to Food Bank program with great organizations like MANA, with amazing partnerships like the Food Council, Heather Bruskin and her team. That doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choices, and it happens over a long period of time. Farming takes a long time to figure out, to make happen. You can't plant a seed and expect anything to grow anytime soon. You have to plant the seeds now for the future. We've done that from a policy perspective. Our families have done that with their decisions that they've made, investing in our county and in our community. And we just take this very seriously, and it's an honor to be able to recognize our farm families, our agricultural community. This is not just about doing good, it's also about doing well. It's an $8 billion industry in the state of Maryland, and Montgomery County plays a huge part in that. So great to be here to recognize it. And now I'd love to turn it over to my colleague, Nancy Navarro.
Well, good morning, everybody. And it is so wonderful to be here in person to celebrate this day, because I do remember saying last time, through that Zoom thing, I hope next year we're in person. And here we are. So it is exciting. And it's so true. I mean, there are so many things to unpack regarding this last 2 years. And one thing that I know overwhelms me all the time with just gratitude is the fact that we live in a county that has such a strong ecosystem of just community love, neighborly love. We have all these assets. I mean, my goodness, talking about United Therapeutics earlier, they play their role. Talking about our farmers, when we reflect on what was done so many decades ago, Royce Hansen, I know, was the first thing that he did was to meet with me when I first joined the county council to explain why this was so important. I have to say that, if anything, these last 2 years came to teach us many lessons that I think for a long time we had been learning in incremental ways, except that these 2 years just accelerated everything. And some say by a factor of 5 years or so, all of the things and all the changes that we experience. I know for me personally, as a mom going to the grocery store for the very first time after the emergency was declared nationally and seeing the empty shelves just really, truly, made an impression. Because then I had to think about what this was going to mean as the weeks went on and what it meant for our low-income communities. But soon we realized that it wasn't just our low-income communities. We had families who were middle class who were lining up and are still lining up because of food insecurity. And to connect those dots around the fact that we have this extraordinary asset here in Montgomery County, we have such dedicated farmers that we saw with our own 2 eyes what can actually occur. It's no longer an if, a hypothetical. Really, I think, calls all of us to accelerate and to be innovative in how we leverage this extraordinary resource. I mean, think about that. 1/3 of our county's land. It's amazing. And since this will be my last sort of official proclamation here as a council member, what I just want to say is that, for those who will be so lucky, so, fortunate, it is such an honor, to occupy these seats. That is that responsibility going forward is how do we leverage everything that we have here in the county to make it a permanent part of how we respond to many of these challenges. Our agricultural reserve, our farmers are absolutely in the epicenter of that need. So thank you all. Thank you, to everyone who has worked in the space of food insecurity. And maybe we go forward with some exciting, out of the box, innovative ways to address what now has definitely become a permanent normal here today. So congratulations. Thank you so much. And I am so glad that we are absolutely here in person in 3D to see each other once again. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Navarro. I'm actually going to take the microphone and just go around, have everybody introduce themselves, and then I'll turn to you, Mr. Sissel, to give some remarks, and then we'll go from there. So we'll start at the end.
So thank you, everybody, today. So I'm Mike Shuffle. I work in the Office of Agriculture. I work with these wonderful farmers.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm Lorian McCauley, farmer and owner of Fresh Mama Farms in Montgomery County and Dickerson, and sustainability and ag consultant for Montgomery County Food Council. So I get to work with Heather every day. So I'm that blessed, and all these other fine folks.
Good morning. I'm Jackie DiCarlo, and I'm pleased to be able to represent Manna Food Center.
Hi, I'm Linda Lewis, and this is Lucy. She's our 6th generation at Lewis Orchards in Dickerson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Chris. I'm the director of the Office of Agriculture, and it's my privilege to be able to work with the agricultural community in Montgomery County.
Bob Sissel, lifetime resident of Montgomery County, director of Montgomery Agricultural Producers. And it's also my honor to have grown up on a farm and worked with these farmers.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Brusk, and I have the proud honor of being a member of the Montgomery County Food Council team.
Good morning. I'm Lonnie Luther, president of Montgomery County Farm Bureau. We have about 300 family members in our organization, and our goal this year is to increase it by another 52 families.
So we have a couple folks who are going to be speaking today about some of the key categories. I wanted to make sure that we gave time for our agricultural reserve, because our agricultural reserve has given so much time to our residents. And so I want to make sure that we have an opportunity. And I apologize, Mr. President, but I know that you feel, as well as the council feels, just how important this is. So, Mr. Sissel, can you talk about the resilience of farming and about our farmers and how they've been able to endure not only through the pandemic, but also through this time that we see right now?
Thank you, Craig. First, I'd like to thank these gentlemen over here. I'm an organ donor, veteran of the Marine Corps in the 60s, and I'm looking forward to the day where organ donation is secondary to what you do. So really like your company, what you're doing. My name is Bob Sissel. I'm the director of Montgomery Agricultural Producers, and I'd like to thank the council for all their hard work. And I'd like to especially thank this gentleman right here I've worked with for 12 years closely, actually when you were in the State House too, who will be losing and you'll be sorely missed. Andrew, who's been our District 1 guy, which is a big part of the Ag Reserve, and all these folks back here that have supported agriculture over the years. I know I only have a minute. It takes me a minute to talk to my cat in the morning. But the agriculture is in a good place today. It's in a good place today because we've learned a lot during the pandemic. We've learned about food resiliency and how we can support it, how we can up our production to feed the people that need to be fed in this county, good quality, well-produced food. But the future is depending on things that are out of our control, like always, the weather. We can't do anything about the weather. We can't do anything about market prices. Farmers are price takers, not price makers. So we live in a global economy when it comes to commodity prices. And these wonderful people from MANA and the Food Council are just pleasures to work with. And I think we've shown over the past 2 years of the pandemic what we can accomplish as a group to make sure that people don't go hungry in this county. There's no reason for them to go hungry in this county. We can up our production. We can work closely with them. So last but not least, our cost of doing business, as with all of you, has gone up dramatically in the past 18 months. Fuel prices, our crop protection products, everything has gone up dramatically. And we are a very short margin of profit business. So we need the council's support when it comes to legislation and regulation to not overregulate us, but to give us legislation that supports us and helps us to continue to do what we set aside 42 years ago to do in the Ag Reserve, and that's to produce quality products in the state of Maryland and in Montgomery County. And that's about.
Thank you. Yep. Now we're going to hear from Lonnie Luther, who's with the Montgomery County Farm Bureau, and he's going to talk about our ongoing opportunities and future opportunities when it comes to farming.
Thank you, Craig, and thank council members. It's a pleasure to be with you today. We have our challenges facing us this year, not just due to the COVID, but partly to that. But our cost of production this year is a real challenge for farmers, and the availability of the supplies, fertilizer and chemicals, is another challenge. So, for example, our fuel costs this year are going to be just about 2x what they were last year. So if your cost was $25,000 last year, it might be $50,000 this year. That's a big increase. The same with fertilizer. Some of our costs are 200 to 300% more for nitrogen in particular, and that's and so we are going to do something. I wish I could tell you that we will reduce food costs, but there's no way in reality that we can make that happen as farmers. So expect higher prices. That's just the bad news of it all. But the good news is that there will be food. We will do our best to juggle the act and get what we can out of the ground. And we take good care of our soil. That's the first step in producing any crop. So we're working on it. We will juggle things around and we will make it work. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you very much. We're going to now turn to Jeremy Chris, our director of our Office of Agriculture, to talk about the importance of the Ag Reserve.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first say that the United Therapeutics proclamation and speakers were inspirational. And the same thing I feel towards the agricultural community as they inspire me to come to work every day and to try to help them. And I'm so thankful to be here in the chambers, the council chambers, and it's really exciting. I want to thank the council for this proclamation and this opportunity to recognize our farmers. And in closing, I just wanted to say that the pandemic has created an opportunity for me to even be more inspired by what the farmers can do and what they are continuing to do, and to form partnerships with the Montgomery County Food Council and the Manna Food Center and the Greater Washington Community Foundation has been inspirational. And with the 35 farmers that we've got signed up for the past 3 growing seasons to grow food for people in need, that's been something that has been really moving, and it's worked. And I don't know if, for those of you that may not know, to get 35 farmers to agree on something, that's a challenge, but that's exactly what we've been able to do through great partners like Heather Bruskin and Jackie DiCarlo and Jenna Emmerich. Thank you, everyone.
And as a director does, he teed it up perfectly. Our next speaker is going to be Heather Bruskin, our director of our Montgomery County Food Council, to talk about the synergy between our local farmers and food security and how quickly we were able to pivot. So, Heather Bruskin.
Good morning, everyone. What a treat to be here in person. Thank you so much, Councilmember Rice Navarro and Friedson and the entire County Council for this honor and opportunity this morning. The Food Council joins in our celebration of the county's Farm to Food Bank partnership. It's between nonprofits, governments, philanthropy, and businesses as a shining example of systems-based strategies to build economic opportunity for our local small businesses, while we also increase equitable access to nutritious, culturally diverse foods across our community. The pandemic has highlighted many long-standing challenges in our local food system, including how tens of thousands of our households across the county live at the brink of food insecurity, and how we're incredibly reliant on food that's sourced from around the world and faraway places to feed our entire population. We all know now that these global supply chains that we're so reliant on are increasingly vulnerable to climate threats and to political impacts. Our Farm to Food Bank initiative not only has immediate impact by increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables and meats to families with low incomes through our robust network of food assistance providers, but it critically enables us to invest in the infrastructure of processing, production, and distribution of our local farms so they can grow more food right here in our county, they can create more jobs, and make our community more resilient and better prepared for the future.
And so I have to thank my staff because the order couldn't be more perfect as we close out with Jackie DiCarlo, the director of Manna Food, to talk about what this all means, why this is so important, and why we focused on this effort, and how we were able to see that impact in our community. So Jackie DiCarlo.
Thanks, Craig, and Councilmember Rice, I just want to point out I am the last speaker, so please step away from the light switch. Don't go off on me right now. Okay. I am very proud to represent Manna Food Center and to thank the entire council, but most especially the partners represented up here. But I'm speaking on behalf of the 45 food assistance organizations that have benefited from this Montgomery County Farm to Food Bank program. And I'm going to first share just a few statistics. So we talked about the ag community as being, struggling to be business people. I hope we're in this partnership not takers. We are negotiating fair prices with our local farmers, and we're also investing in those farms. So our last round of capacity building grants invested about $142,000 in 20 local farms. Over half of them were owned and worked by people of color or women of color. So happy Women's History Month of March. We are really trying to build the capacity of a diverse food system. Of the 120,000 pounds that we have bought, everything from oats to goats, we are able to get them to people who are struggling, as someone said, to make sure that they have enough food on their table. And so what this means is that basically there are 36 farms who say, hey, we would like to make this food available. It's mostly veggies, but as I said, it's a range. A volunteer comes and picks up that food with that negotiated fair price and then takes it to one of our 45 partners. So it may be something that starts in Lucy's farm, and Lucy, the volunteer, takes it to a consolidated service hub that helps Lucia, a single mom who lost her job in the pandemic. So that's what's being made possible through this partnership. And we thank the county, we thank private philanthropy, we thank the hardworking farmers, and also the volunteers and staff of our food assistance community. There will be food for all with these kinds of programs. It will be a new, better future. Thank you.
So we're going to read the proclamation, but before we do, I just want to acknowledge our Farm to Food Bank partners. You heard from Jackie about a number of them, and we have a couple that are here today. So we've got Alden Farms, Purple Mountain Organics, Amaranth Acres, Beauty Blooms, Bella Vita Farm, Blueberry Gardens, Butler's Orchard, Button Farm, Chicken of the Woods Farm, Chirandu Farm, Common Root, Dodo Farms, Eat the Rainbow Farm, Farm at Home, The Farm at Our House. You see these names are very creative. Farm at Home, the Farm at Our House, Fresh Mama Farms, Heinz Garden, Homestead Farm, Coiner Farm, Lewis Orchard, yay Lucy, Metro Microgreens, 1 Acre Farm, Passion to Seed Gardening, Peas and Peace, Plow and Stars, Red Wiggler Community Farm, Roslyn Farms, Sandy Spring Gardens, Savage Acres Farm Incorporated, Serenity Orchards, Somerset Produce, and Tanglewood Sheep and Goat Farm. Bet you didn't know we had one of those. So, if my colleagues could join me, we're going to go ahead and read the proclamation together. So, whereas 2022 marks the 49th anniversary of National Agriculture Day, which was created in 1973 to recognize and celebrate the contributions of the agriculture industry in cultivating our natural resources and producing vital products for use and consumption, and
whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has further intensified the challenges faced by the agricultural community, yet our farmers have displayed exemplary resilience and continue to provide fresh foods while advancing sustainable land use, and
whereas the National Agricultural Day spotlights the immense value of the agricultural reserve in Montgomery County and the hardworking professionals who support the reserve's more than 550 farms, 350 horticultural enterprises, and thriving equine industry, as their efforts have resulted in one of the most successful land conservation endeavors in the country, and
whereas our participating farms have made possible the Montgomery County Farm to Food Bank program, which is a government and community partnership that provides nutritious and diverse local produce to food assistance programs and serves as a major component in combating the 50% growth in food insecurity since the onset of the pandemic, and
whereas Montgomery County has become a leader in agricultural conservation and output because of the agricultural reserve's protected water sources and green spaces, allowing the land to sustain farm-to-table crops as well as cultural and recreational resources, and
the diverse range of enterprises in the agricultural reserve contribute more than $42 million annually in crop sales and $6.5 million in livestock sales to the economy, employ more than 10,000 residents, and provide valuable services to the community.
So now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes March 22nd, 2022 as National Agriculture Day, and be it further resolved that the Council encourages all residents to honor farmers and those in the agricultural industry for the vital role they have in our economy and to support the continuation of our county's farming heritage and culture, presented this 22nd day of March in the year 2022, signed by our council president and the county council. Congratulations.
All right, thanks everyone. We are a little behind this morning, but we have one more proclamation, and then we will be going on to general business. Thank you everybody who's here for Legislative Day number 9 in the work session regarding Expedited Bill 4921. We will be getting to that important topic immediately after this next proclamation, and I'm going to ask all of my colleagues, stay standing because we're all going to do this one together. So one of the terms in leadership that I hold most dear is the term servant leader. And servant leader means different things to different people, but the trait that most comes to the surface for me is humility. But there was a communications firm that quantified what the attributes were that the most people attributed to servant leaders, and here's what they discovered. These are the top 10. Servant leaders are often good listeners, empathetic, healing, awareness, persuasive, good at conceptualizing things, have foresight, have stewardship, have a commitment to the growth of the people around them, and help build communities. I think that pretty well sums up Joan Kleiman. Joan Kleiman, for more than 2 decades, has served our country, our state, and our county with tremendous distinction. She has been a voice of reason, and she has been a tremendous partner and a glue and a bridge on so many complicated issues across our state. And there are countless numbers of people that reside in our state who have brought forward very complicated issues to the Van Hollen office, and through Joan's leadership, help resolve many of those issues and improve their lives, and thus improve the lives of all of us. So Joan, it is always such a pleasure to see you in meetings. It is always such a pleasure to see you in the community. You've represented Chris so well, but you've represented all of us, really. And so it's an honor and privilege to be serving as council president during this term, to be able to kick us off here. But all of my colleagues I know want to speak, to say a few words in expressing their gratitude to you for your remarkable leadership. So we're going to go down the list here. First, we're going to start with Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. Well, Joan, this is really hard because I know I can speak for everyone in a selfish way. It's always so comforting to know that one can pick up the phone and one can present to you any challenge, what's anything, and you will follow up and you will be there to make sure that everything is taken care of immediately. And every time I think of how much we love and admire Senator Van Hollen when he was first a congressman, et cetera, when I began to interact a lot with your office, there is no doubt that that has a lot to do with you, because there you are always understanding exactly what it is that our community needs. And what I have to say from the bottom of my heart is just thank you, because there are many issues that have, a lot of constituents behind it, but there are a lot of other issues that perhaps do not. It's the invisible faces. And I know that my office would often reach out to you about some complicated issues that those who sometimes are invisible were facing. And every single time, with the sense of absolute humility, dedication, and humanity, you always responded and you always were there to help. So thank you for everything that you have done, as has been said, for not just our county, but our state and our nation and the world, to be actually accurate. Thank you so much, and I hope that you just enjoy your time now, because you have served us so well. Thank you, John.
Joan, good morning. Thank you for loving our community and loving our country. And that's really what your work has been and what you've been doing. And here in the council and in Montgomery County, we help fix Wisconsin Avenue and Connecticut Avenue and Georgia Avenue. And you do all of that and connect it with Pennsylvania Avenue. And that really is what has fortified our relationship and has made you so important to all of our collective work. And I look forward to seeing more photos of your family on social media, which I know you've already been enjoying. And thank you for your lifetime of commitment.
So Joan has had the pleasure of seeing me since I was a member of Young Dems quite some time ago. And Joan, let me just say that as I've now matriculated into this role with the National Association of Counties, I think oftentimes we take for granted what we have here in Montgomery County. We take for granted that we have a dedicated person like yourself who understands the issues and commits to solving them. I mean, that's what has happened time after time again, whether it was immigration issues that we faced, whether it was budget funding issues that we faced, whether it was just the simple, a person needed to get a passport so that they could go on a trip. These are all things that happen as a result of people who care. And they all contribute to the quality of life that individuals have here in Montgomery County. Something that we are incredibly blessed with, and we heard throughout our presentation today. I do believe things happen for a reason. All of these things are tied together, and they're tied to great people like you. And so I hope that Senator Van Hollen can find another person who has that same dedication, who has that same heart, who has that same commitment that you've had, because we need that to continue and make sure that that great work that has happened for decades continues here. So thank you so much.
Joan, you've been like a Batman and Robin duo with the senator. You through your work, you have really exemplified what makes this county special, and with the senator have brought a character to the leadership of the community. And I think that is what I've always really appreciated, is knowing that there is someone who is thoughtful, who is focused, who has a really great demeanor, and is going to focus on the facts. And it has a big impact on how we all perceive the leadership of this county, what we're all about. And so I'm just really grateful for that work and wish you the very best, and look forward to seeing what you find to do next to move our community forward. And I know you will.
Well, Joan, you've been a friend and a mentor to all of us, to so many of us, to staff members, to elected officials, and really somebody who exemplifies what public service is, what it should be, what it can be. If you are a Batman and Robin duo with Senator Van Hollen, we won't tell the senator who's Batman and who's Robin. So hopefully he's not watching right now. But with grace, with passion, you really have been everything that public service should be, and we are all benefiting from that service. We'll continue to benefit from your service. We hope that you enjoy your time now, and certainly you've worked in the Van Hollen office, but you've worked for all of us. And we just are so grateful, so appreciative, and we'll continue to value everything that you've taught us, you've shown us, and you've done for us. So thank you so much.
I know that this is getting tiring for you, Joan, but candidly, we cannot say thank you enough. And I mean that sincerely. We have seen you over the years. How many people, as has been mentioned, you've been called Batman and Robin, you've been called a lot of things today. But the thing that was always the most comforting for all of us was that when somebody said, we have a problem, he said, well, let's call Joan Kleinman. And that is the most important thing that a constituent can ever hear, is that this problem is going to get solved. And to Councilmember Navarro's point, you know, there are some issues have such large constituencies, but to the person who is Social Security is missing, to the person it's their life, and somebody named Joan Kleinman would step in and take care of that. When we first heard the rumors that you were thinking about retiring, of course, we were not happy, and candidly, we're not that happy right now either. But when we first heard the rumors, I said, and we were on a Zoom with Senator Van Hollen, that I know that the county council would pass legislation that would make that illegal for you to retire. And I really, not that we agree on everything every time, that would be a 9-0, I'm telling you. And in fact, the senator said he would vote for it as well. So anyhow, thank you so much for what you do. And, you know, you should enjoy your retirement, but we're not going to let you retire. We're going to pester you pretty good. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Joan. So at this point, I feel like everything's been said, but my colleagues said very well exactly what I wanted to say, that you've been such a great partner and friend and mentor, as Andrew said, to work with. We all knew you as district director. Now we've had to work with you for many years as state director, and the universe of the problems that you've been able to apply yourself to and the complexity has just grown and grown. And you not only make Senator Van Hollen look good in all these challenging settings, you've been able to make Montgomery County and all of us look good as well. And so many of our viewers, I know, will never appreciate how difficult that is. And it's absolutely true what Nancy and Sydney have said, that you've not only been a masterful problem solver and public service servant at rounding up public federal funding and solving big complicated problems like keeping massive construction projects on track, but there's all these individual cases behind the scenes that you work out, and you dedicate yourself as much to them and any individual as you do to a huge multi-billion-dollar project. And that really, I think, says to me like where your heart is and how much you care about every individual in the county and the county as a whole. So we're really going to miss you. I'm realizing that all my time in public office has been during the Joan Kleinman era, and now I'm reconciling myself uncomfortably to the idea there's a post-Joan Kleinman era. But I know you've trained such a great farm team that you're going to keep a tight watch on them and make sure they continue to succeed. So wish you all the best in your retirement, and we're going to stay in close touch. Thank you.
All right, great job, colleagues. I'm now going to read the proclamation, then turn it over to Joan to say some comments. Proclamation of Montgomery County. Whereas for nearly 2 decades, Joan Kleinman has served our nation, our state, and our county with great honor and distinction. Her humble heart, keen wit, courageous leadership, and dedication to helping others produced an impeccable track record of public service, which has improved the lives of countless residents and their families. And whereas Joan was born and raised in New York State and moved to Washington, D.C., upon her graduation from Columbia Law School and Cornell University, she got waitlisted at Maryland, where she began her public service career as district director for then Congressman Chris Van Hollen, who represented Maryland's 8th Congressional District from 2003 until 2017. And whereas Joan's public service extended to the United States Senate, and when Mr. Van Hollen was elected to the upper chamber of Congress in November 2016, as his state director, Joan continued to oversee his constituent service and outreach operations and ensured that every constituent who sought assistance from Senator Van Hollen's office was treated with the utmost respect. And whereas it was through her compassionate vision and leadership that children and families were reunited, seniors and veterans received their benefits, service members, including Marylanders appointed to the U.S. service academies, were supported in their service to our nation, the homeless and sick were cared for, local small businesses were sustained and able to thrive, and most importantly, she took the time to mentor staff members, including Lillian Cruz, who's my Deputy Chief of Staff now, to become the best versions of themselves. And whereas, as a pillar of our community, Joan also serves as the board of directors of her college tracks, which helps first-generation disadvantaged students navigate the college admissions process. Emerge Maryland, which recruits, trains, and helps elect Democratic women to public office, and the David and Dorothy Mullets-David Scholarship Fund, which provides financial support to Montgomery College students interested in public or community service. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County and all of our staff and central staff, who send their best wishes too, hereby honor the lifetime service of Joan Kleiman for her unwavering commitment to Montgomery County residents and whose vision has enriched our county, state, and nation in immeasurable ways. Signed on this day, March 22nd, 2022, by myself on behalf of all of my colleagues. Joan. It's good to see you too, Sam. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all. I haven't had so many presentations since my bat mitzvah a few years ago. But you all reminded me why I have had the best job in the world over the last 19 years, making a difference in people's lives every single day, whether it's a small thing or a big thing. It was always a big thing to the people who called and asked for our help. So thank you. I worked for an extraordinary member of Congress who is a decent, hardworking public servant, and I know of no better. But thank you to all of you, because it was with your support, your ideas, your service that helped us do what we did. And we did so many projects together, and I thank you all. But we all know that the special sauce, the secret sauce to what we do is our staff. And I worked with incredibly talented, compassionate, resourceful people over the years whose heart was in it and worked so hard to help people get the government services and support that they need. And I'm pleased that my successor as State Director, Ashima Talvar, is here. I know that I have left this office and this enterprise in very solid hands, and I know you'll enjoy working with her. I'm proud that she was an intern for us many years ago, came back as staff, and knows exactly what Senator Van Hollen expects of the office that we run. And I thank, while I'm thanking people, my family, my husband, Sam Whitten, is here. My 93-year-old mother is, I'm sure, watching, as are my children, Ben, Ari, Molly, and my daughter-in-law, Sarah Levy, and perhaps my grandson, Miles, who's 16 months old, but a once-in-a-generation mind. But thank you to all of you for the staff that you hired. One of the most important documents that hung over my desk on my bulletin board was the direct line to each of you and each member of your staff. And I knew that if a constituent contacted us with a county problem, I needed to make one phone call, and I knew that the problem would get solved quickly and well. So thank you all. I am incredibly humbled. As I said, I had the best job in the world. And you reminded me of all the reasons that while I miss it, I am happy to have sat here not checking my email for the first time in 19 years. So thank you all. I am really grateful.
All right, thank you everyone so much. Those were wonderful proclamations and presentations. We now move on to general business. Madam Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, council members. We have a few announcements. The public hearings on the FY23 operating budget will be held on April 19 and April 20, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. and April 19, 2021, 2022 at 7 p.m. Persons wishing to sign up may do so beginning March 24th, 2022. The council is seeking applicants for the vacancy on the Montgomery County Planning Board. The application deadline is March 25th, 2022 at 5 p.m. The council is also seeking applicants for the vacancy on the Montgomery County Board of Appeals. The application deadline for that is April 8th, 2022 at 5 p.m. The council has also received a petition from residents of Montgomery County opposing Bill 4921, Police Accountability Board, Administrative Charging Committee established. That is all, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I first just want to say thank you to all of you. Last week I was hoping to be here and unfortunately had a very horrific accident. And I just want to express my thanks to all of you, but then also the greater community who's reached out and supported. It's been incredibly helpful to me. So I just want to thank you for that. And I'd also like to be recorded in the affirmative for the consent calendar for last week. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice, and it's really good to see you, buddy. We're happy you're here, my friend, in many ways. All right, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. That moves us on to item number C, which is an action, which is the approval of the minutes from February 8, 17, and 28th. Is there any discussion or concerns regarding those minutes? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Which moves us on to item number 4, which is a work session regarding expedited bill 4921. Thank you so much. So thank you all for your diligence as we've worked through what is obviously a critically important issue. And I have been very pleased with the progress that we have made thus far in working through an issue that, as we've noted all along, is very time sensitive. And we are on track to move forward with voting on this measure on March 29th. And today will most likely be our final formal work session on this issue. And then I's will be dotted and T's will be crossed for the final bill reading, and which will again be on March 29th. So there are some outstanding items that we have not yet worked through, and I will turn it over now to Mr. Drummer to walk us through the packet and those items. Mr. Drummer.
Okay, good morning. It's a tough act to follow. I think I'd rather follow the COVID-19 spread of virus. Okay. The bill 4921, you've made quite a few amendments so far. We've increased the Police Accountability Board membership from 5 to 9, with at least one member residing in a municipality covered by the PAB, and also to permit the executive to appoint one or more non-voting members. You've clarified that all complaints from the public must be investigated and reported to the Administrative Charging Committee. You've added an amendment to require funding for training of PAB and ACC members from both police departments and outside organizations. And you've authorized the council to remove a member of the ACC and the PAB for failure to complete any required training. You've also required the PAB and the ACC to meet at least monthly, and the council's also approved an amendment to delete the factor or the reason of violation of law as one of the reasons for removal of a member. You've approved an amendment to replace the professional experience required for a member with a statement that the member must be able to demonstrate through professional or lived experience the ability to balance effective oversight, perform objective analysis of an investigation report, and practice procedural fairness. And at the last work session, you also added 2 amendments to remove the prohibition on compensation for PAB members and to permit, not necessarily require, but permit the council to provide compensation for PAB members in the budget. And you've added a requirement for full-time dedicated staff for both the PAB and the ACC. And last week, you also required the county attorney to retain special legal counsel to provide legal support for both the PAB and the ACC. The remaining issues really is a transition clause. As you know, HB 670 has a grandfather clause that delays the effectiveness of this mandatory statewide disciplinary system for members who police officers who are represented by a union that has a collective bargaining agreement entered into before June of this year that contains a different disciplinary procedure, and that would delay the effective date for those members until July 1, 2023. That would actually apply to the members represented by our own FOP Lodge 35, the county police officers. Otherwise, for everyone else, the bill would be required to, or the bill would take effect for any incident occurring on or after July 1 of this year, 2022. There is a proposed amendment in the packet that's described on, well, I'm going to have to find it here. It's at the end of the staff report. On page, it's a little slow to do it this way. Well, somehow or other, my computer is not pulling up the entire. Well, it's at the end of the packet. I'll have to pull it up a different way. Page 20 of the staff report. There is a proposed amendment to try and make put some clarity towards the state's grandfather clause, which is not as clear as it could have been. But it simply does what I said. It requires this to take effect for all police officers represented by a.
Bob, can you clarify what page we're on? It's page 20. Is that circle 20? Is that?
No, it's page 20 of the staff report.
Okay.
So it's the memo page 20. The memo page 20. Yes. For some reason, my computer is not pulling up the entire thing. That would be a staff suggestion to include the that transition clause, which would be, I believe, consistent with the state. Yeah, as soon as I can pull it up. Yeah, I will. Yeah, if you might.
I can read it. So the transition clause would read, Section 3, expedited effective date, comma, transition. The council declares that this legislation is necessary for the immediate protection of the public interest. This act takes effect on the date on which it becomes law and must apply to eligible complaints based on an incident occurring on or after, A, July 1, 2023, against a police officer who is covered by a collective bargaining agreement entered into before June 30th, 2022, that includes a different disciplinary system, and B, July 1, 2022, against any other police officer.
I believe that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. I should have noted at the beginning of this discussion, Councilmember Jawando is joining us, but he is virtually joining us this morning. He is not on camera, but I believe his audio is on, so he is listening, and if he'd like to speak to an issue or make a motion, he can text me, and I will turn it over to him and hope that the I team knows how to connect to him.
Did we also text you?
Yes, everybody should text me if they'd like to speak, just as we did last Tuesday. And first in the queue is Chairman of our Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Drummer, for going through this. I think it should be noted that what was read to us was on pages 19 and 20 of the packet. Have we received any updates, and I can never remember the group's name, that was working on the mandatory requirements for this bill from the state?
Well, as of last night, what I heard was that they had it's the Maryland Police Training and Standards
Right,
Commission.
that is the name of it, which I can never get right. Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I get it wrong a lot too. They actually voted out proposed regulations, but it hasn't been made public yet.
That's certainly helpful.
So we don't actually have the actual language that they approved. I don't know if maybe Dr. Stoddard or Assistant Chief Frank have more information on that.
Yeah, our understanding is they were preparing them for the public registry, as well as I guess their policy and planning director has to review the exact language to make sure if there are any editorial changes. We were expecting it last
Earl,
Friday.
can you get a little closer?
We were expecting it last Friday to be released. It obviously was not released last Friday, so we haven't heard an update since late last week.
Okay, thank you. And then, because some of what they might, I mean, we don't know, but some of what they might be telling us is that we might have to change parts of this legislation because we have to, if it's mandatory, we would have to conform to what they're telling us. Are we in agreement on that, or is that?
Yeah, well, yes, but what they're putting out is a proposed regulation that needs to go through the comment period and needs to ultimately get approved. So it wouldn't be final even if we had the actual language. We don't know if that's going to, whatever is there is going to be the same at the end of but at the end of the game, yes, it would be mandatory.
Right, which leads me to the council president, and I'm very pleased that we're moving forward on this, and hopefully we'll vote on this by March 29th. But if we vote on this by March 29th, and if there are discrepancies in what the state is telling us we could do and what we have done, are we going to have to come back and vote on this again? How does that work?
Well, we might have to come back and do some amendments to the bill that you've already enacted, but I'm not aware of anything that's in our bill that would have to be amended.
Okay.
If I may, I think the issues go deeper than that, because my understanding of some of the provisions that were passed in this draft, for example, a prohibition around those convicted of a felony or those of a misdemeanor entailing more than 1 year, it requires you to be a legal resident of the United States. We would view those as problematic, and obviously if we select people who would not qualify for those criteria and then they end up holding up, we would have to remove those people, or we could not select people who meet those criteria, and then that's not representative of our community. And so obviously there are significant challenges posed by the fact that these drafts have been promulgated as they have. We intend to submit public comment from the executive branch, and obviously would encourage members of the public to do the same when that becomes possible. But obviously there are some significant problems, because our intention was when the council passes this enabling legislation on the 29th to immediately launch a recruitment process to begin recruiting members for the PAB because of the timelines. But how we select nominees will be obviously influenced by what's been promulgated by draft resolution, or we can select members and end up having to remove them because of not meeting the state criteria, which is which is a problem. So in addition to correcting the council legislation on the back end, or the council bill on the back end, it obviously poses significant challenges for our recruitment process in the near term.
And I don't know how we could avoid that at this point.
I don't see it, and I will say that you're not necessarily, for that issue, you won't have to go back and amend the legislation, but as Dr. Stoddard pointed out, we may have appointed somebody that may no longer be qualified to serve, which would be a very big problem, but not a legislative problem, because there's nothing in the bill that, we don't have anything in the bill that would prevent us from appointing somebody who doesn't meet the citizenship qualification. But we also, but it would just be a problem with appointment. Now, there may be other issues that come up, term of office, they may have a different number than we do. That wouldn't be an immediate problem. I don't know what else they might have.
Well, but early on, we could advertise for what we have asked for.
Absolutely.
I'm saying this in a positive way, and I'm asking a question. But we could advertise for what we have asked for, and if ultimately the state regulations come back and say, oh, no, you can't, then the people who did apply, who met the criteria that we asked for but did not meet the criteria that the state required, we would just not interview them, or however, the county executive would not send their name forward.
That was our intent to do, because frankly, I want to be able to illustrate that there were incredibly qualified candidates who we were not permitted to select because of the state regulation, because then that becomes another point of advocacy against the regulation as it's drafted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to turn back for the moment. I have a feeling you might have a few other comments today.
Of course. Councilmember Reamer, followed by Councilmember Friedson.
Okay, well, great. So first of all, we did sort of pause at the end of the packet, and there is an amendment that we should move. I don't intend to move it at this second, but I know the council president will make sure we don't miss that opportunity. I wanted to delve into a topic that has been on the minds of many, which is the potential for any of this to be subject to collective bargaining. And the council has, in some areas of policymaking over the past few years, recognized that it's important to prohibit what we are doing from subsequently being subject to collective bargaining, because we're making a public policy decision. And we don't think that a public policy decision of the particular nature we're enacting is appropriate to be revised through a arbitration process. We've applied that in certain important but limited contexts. And we have been asked about whether anything in this legislation, which is based on state law, would then be subject to collective bargaining. And I wanted to ask Bob how you see that issue, and whether, therefore, based on your view, it's necessary to, state that these matters are not subject to collective bargaining, or not?
Well, first of all, the state law preempts us from making any changes in the disciplinary system provided for by the state law, and that includes collective bargaining. You wouldn't be allowed to change it. You wouldn't be allowed to change the system with the PAB, the ACC, the trial boards. All of that is set in state law, and you can't change it.
You can't bargain.
You couldn't
state law is
bargain
not
over
subject
it.
to bargaining.
Now, there are issues that are there are some issues that are, I guess I've heard that we've added in the bill that aren't required by the state, that may not be that are not preempted by state law, but they're also not something that I would think are subject to collective bargaining. Like the example I was given is salaries for members of the board or the charging committee. I don't think that would be subject to bargaining with the police union. Right. But even if there was something that I'm not smart enough to think about to anticipate that could be bargained, There are some very creative people in collective bargaining, especially with our public sector unions. It would have anything that we've put in this law couldn't be bargained away without the council agreeing to amend the law. All the FOP could do with the executive would be recommend a change in law, and the council would still have to approve it. So that can't happen. Now, the one thing that I did want to mention is internal complaints. We've already agreed to the state law only covers complaints of police misconduct filed by a member of the public. This bill tracks that and only covers that. So what you might refer to as internal complaints that don't start with a member from the public.
In other words, a supervisor observes something or an officer complains about a fellow officer.
That remains something that's subject to bargaining with the FOP. Bless you. But
because that disciplinary process is internal.
That's, I mean, you know, the current makeup of the trial board for an internal complaint would remain the same for our county police officers, and whatever the procedure they have for municipal police departments would remain the same. And for our county police, it would be subject to bargaining, but that's not really anything that's in this bill.
Does that mean that the existing process of the alternative hearing board remains in place for
an internal
complaints?
Right. I mean, ultimately, you may decide once the system, I think this was already discussed originally, is once the system's up and running, you see how it's going, maybe everything gets moved into this system, maybe not. But all we're doing here is covering what we have to under the state law. Everything else remains the way it is now, but it's not everything else. I mean, I guess Assistant Chief Frank can give you some idea of what kind of complaints we're talking about that wouldn't be covered, but it's essentially something that's not, it doesn't arise from a complaint by a member of the public, because that's what the state law limited HB 670 to.
So as long as a complaint has been filed in relation to
complaint filed against the police officer, it's in this system, and
goes
it's
into this
not
system.
bargainable to change the system.
Chief Frank, can you expand on this at all? Share also the distinction, what kinds of matters would go before the existing disciplinary procedures?
So Bob is correct on the external and on what would it would not be bargainable. The internal would still be bargainable. We have a term bargaining coming up with FOP Lodge 35 beginning in the fall, and we're going to look at this issue. The current process could stay the same or it could change. That would be a negotiation that we'll take part in as we're looking at all of the discipline process and how it's changing through the PAA and now with the enactment of the PAB and ACC. So as far as the...
Can I just, if I could interject just a moment?
Please.
I think the existing process is very flawed. Not processes that, the alternative hearing board is very flawed, in my opinion. It is a process that where a arbitration judge ends up with the deciding vote, and the FOP gets to veto who becomes an arbitration judge. And that process doesn't work well, and it's been documented. The New York Times has done a very extensive review of police departments across the country and finds that arbitration judges, when they have the deciding vote, those disciplinary processes just don't work very well, and the public does not get satisfaction. So there's actually legislation before the County Council now that I'd introduced with Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Giwando to change that. And it has been pending action, and we may need to consider whether it should be forwarded in order to address the disciplinary procedure for those internal matters. But could you talk about what kind of matters are of distinction? It could be that the matters that would remain in that process are unlikely to go to a hearing board anyway, I don't know. Could you share a little bit?
It'll be a very limited set that remains internal because, again, we still have the obligation of events that occur with the public. And those are really primarily what the legislator was interested in as far as how we deal with those complaints that involve interactions with the public. So even if they're internal, a supervisor sees something, they file a complaint, investigation takes place. And I'll ask Haley Roberts, who's with us, if she can expound on it a little bit more to make sure, because she's helping us lead the way as far as how this goes. There are some things that will go to the ACC, and thank you, Haley. But for the couple examples for us, supervisor observes an officer speeding, and that actually could end up being a training issue unless it escalates past that to multiple times and then becomes a disciplinary process. Haley, did you want to say anything more?
Yeah. Good morning.
No, not yet.
Push the button there.
There you are.
Good morning. So right now, what would remain in effect for internals would be anything outside of this specific legislation. So there may be certain internal complaints that would remain under the exact same, anything that is in the contract would remain the process until it is either legislated away or it is bargained at the next term bargaining session. But again, term bargaining is only if the parties agree to make those changes. So if there are internal complaints.
May I pause you on that? So term bargaining is only if the parties agree. Both parties have to agree. The system that we have is for those internal processes is one the FOP won through the bargaining process many years ago. I think it doesn't work to their advantage. And so it's unlikely that they would agree to accept changes that we think are more in the public interest, to say it quite bluntly. So we're stuck with that system for internal procedures until something else happens.
And yes, unless there's some sort of legislative change that takes place that trumps the collective bargaining process. If there's a law, while the union may not necessarily agree on that, there are certain
okay.
legislative
So
steps
that
can be
process
taken.
remains for those internal functions. It's interesting because we don't always hear about serious matters. I mean, this is not in the Montgomery County Police Department, but in the Parks Department, we learned the other week of some pretty vile behavior that showed officers with very poor judgment, and I think real questions about their ability to be good officers. That never became public until someone sued, as far as I'm aware. An officer sued. So that matter would remain if that had been in the county, and it was not, but if it had been, it would have remained in the internal process and perhaps would have been subject to the labor arbitrator-based panel. Okay.
Yes.
So recognizing we have a continuing question here about the disciplinary process for internal matters, and having divided that line, the matters that have received a public complaint are not bargainable. Nothing in that is bargainable because the state has said it is not subject, it may not be collectively bargained.
Correct, yes. The state law preempts any bargainability on that.
Is that clear?
Yeah, I would just add that this is, Bill 3420 that you referenced, which is still pending, not only would take the internal disciplinary process, well, at the time it was written, it would the entire disciplinary process out of collective bargaining. It also created a new one. You would need to, if you really want to change it, you need to create a new one and then say it's not bargainable,
right,
or just create a new one. Just saying it's not bargainable won't change
right,
the existing system.
Correct.
No,
No, we would need
system
to
would then be set in stone until you did.
So in other words, if we were to say discipline is not bargainable, now we are not changing the existing internal process. We would need to proceed with that legislation, or
it would make more sense if that's what you're worried about, is to go back to the other bill and amend it to it would just apply then to internal complaints, not try and do it through this bill, because you're not setting up a different system.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Yield back.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. My first questions were about the timing. I think we satisfied that ultimately we can recruit. We have to pass this bill because state law is requiring us to pass it. The timing of the state regulatory process makes this complicated and puts us in a challenging situation. But we have to pass the bill because we want to comply with state law, need to comply with state law, and we can recruit. And ultimately, we'll have to make our appointment decisions based on the state final, regulatory decisions, some of which we may not agree with, but we'll have to comply with them. So that Councilmember Katz honed in on that. I just wanted to, summarize that. That's your understanding, my understanding, all of our understanding. I think that's a really important point. I just wanted to hone in on this question of internal complaints versus external complaints. My understanding of, and I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, the changes to the Public Information Act that went into effect on October the 1st changed what can be accessed by the public. And that would not include an administrative complaint, a uniform issue or something, tardiness to meetings, other administrative dynamics, but it would include other complaints, including use of force or other issues that are seen by a fellow officer and an internal complaint related to that. Is my understanding of the difference between the changes that were made on October 1st and the difference of administrative versus non-administrative, at least at a high level, is that accurate?
That might be a better question for Ms. Roberts to answer, but I'm not really sure that's exactly what it said. I think it just simply made certain investigation reports subject to disclosure that formerly were considered personnel files.
I'll turn to the experts, of which I'm clearly not one. Don't play them on Zoom. So
no, you're correct, sir, and I apologize. Crossing streams on different things that are going on with us as far as change. You are correct as far as the MPIA goes. When an infraction comes in, so we deem them as technical infractions. But a technical infraction, once it deals with an officer that's either performing supervisory roles or performing or interacting with the public. So first of all, interacting with the public, that is able to be released through MPIA laws. And then even with, for example, a supervisor that is using their supervisory burden in a wrong format, and that's investigated, that would be able to be released under MPIA. But again, not with PAB, with the PAB ACC. So you are correct. Did you want to add to that?
I think the only thing that perhaps might need a little bit of clarification is that the MPIA comes typically after the investigation has been complete, because the investigation has different steps of, when individuals are interviewed, when the investigative report is concluded. So under the MPIA, those records are releasable unless they're a technical infraction, which again is very limited in scope of the types of matters that would be a technical infraction. But then if it is a technical infraction, it would not be released, and those would most likely be an internal complaint anyways in their nature, but there may be other internal complaints that are not a technical infraction.
So in those instances, the timing matters, of course, because there is a fairly prolonged investigative process. MPIA relates to documents, and it wouldn't be until the document was final that it would be subject to the MPIA request, which you
Correct.
Just noted. Once it is a public document and subject to MPIA, could a member of the public access it and file a complaint based on the document?
You can file a subsequent IAD complaint
Yeah,
in
as a
light
member
of the
public.
document.
And would that be subject then to ACC and PAB? In other words, normally a member of the public files a complaint that they are an aggrieved party. Either they witnessed or they were subject to an inappropriate police action. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, truly, I don't know the answer to the question, of whether or not a member of the public in a more broad sense could file for an MPIA request on an inappropriate use of supervisory function or use of force or some other issue that was an internal complaint that was officer to officer, was not a public complaint, and could then, on the basis of that document, even if they weren't a witness or even if they weren't alleged victim, could they then file that complaint, and would that then be subject to the ACC and the PAB?
So that is a bit of a complex hypothetical. A couple of clarifying points first. So technical infractions include investigative, enforcement, training, supervision, or reporting responsibilities of the officer. So it's not just limited to supervisory responsibilities. There still is a timeline that is in effect. So if the allegations have already been investigated as an internal complaint and they've been adjudicated, if you will, through the internal process that is currently in place in the collective bargaining agreement, I do not believe that you could then go and have a subsequent investigation that goes to the ACC. I mean, anyone could file a complaint, but it would almost be duplicative because the officer has already been subjected to discipline and to a disciplinary process, and they've already gone through that, and the timeline to complete that investigation has already occurred. So they've already been interrogated, their rights have already been, adhered to essentially for that disciplinary process. So to have another investigation or complaint filed that then subjects them to another investigation, I don't believe that is actually something that could occur. But I'm certain that there probably could be an instance that I'm not thinking of where, if there was some sort of action that was not investigated, so say an individual gets a copy of that MPIA file and during the course of review of that MPIA file, they see some other potential misconduct that was not investigated, maybe it was another officer or something along those lines, then that could potentially be a different investigation. But just having the technical matter, the internal resolved as a technical, and then having that, or not as a technical, because that would not be a release, but having an internal that's completed that then were to have a new citizen complaint, I don't believe you could do a subsequent investigation on that.
So one of the things is when they are dealing with the public, the individuals that were involved in the event, they would be interviewed by investigators. So they would be aware of the offense. That's part of our process. So I guess one of the questions might be, could then citizen is interviewed, reference an internal complaint, could then they file a complaint at the time while the investigation's going on?
I see. Triggered not by the MPIA request, but triggered by the interview itself.
Triggered by the interview itself. So I think in that sense, and I'll let the counselor speak to that, but I believe that would then trigger the external complaint.
Yes, they could file a subsequent or a simultaneous complaint, and that would trigger the external process.
Got it. Okay. Incredibly complicated. I just wanted to make sure I understood at least a little bit of this. And I understand that you have to have injury to file a lawsuit, but this is a little bit more complicated. What's the standard of filing a complaint through this new process as a member of the public, which is a different standard than what has been the standard. So appreciate that clarification. There are further questions, but
you could also file anonymously. So you may not, even if you weren't the aggrieved party and you file anonymously, you could file an anonymous complaint against of some sort of misconduct. In that case, so you could theoretically be filing on behalf of someone else anonymously as well. So.
And that could be based on the interview itself, but not necessarily the MPIA.
Right.
Okay. Because I think what was stated earlier is that the MPIA request, you couldn't like kick the investigation to a new process because it had already been investigated.
Right.
But if you're
something that's already been investigated and is gone through the system as an internal complaint, you couldn't turn it into not the same incident. You couldn't turn the same incident into a external complaint by complaining about the.
But this is where it is a little bit confusing, because if I am being interviewed, I don't necessarily know what the internal process is. I just know that somebody has interviewed me and asked me about an incident. I then file a complaint as a member of the public, about the incident that occurred. That is two investigations, it would seem, because that complaint would have to be independently pursued, right?
I think if the ongoing internal complaint is still being investigated, then the department who's handling that complaint could incorporate the external with the
It
internal
would just be
investigation.
part of the same investigation,
Yes.
but it couldn't be part of a different investigation in a different venue.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Wow. I'm going to need another cup of coffee this morning. I've got Councilmember Reamer followed by Councilmember Wright. I'm sorry, Councilmember Katz followed by Councilmember Reamer. Councilmember Katz followed by Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a little confused about the answer that you gave to Councilmember Reamer. The fact that Council President confused us made it that much more confusing to me just now. But if there's an ongoing, if there's a new contract that's being negotiated between not just the Fraternal Order of Police, but any labor organization in the county, is it a completely new contract? Do every parts of that contract have to be agreed on by both parties as they're doing it? Or if something happened in the previous contract and this was, I mean, to your point about the grievances and whatnot that take place, not grievances, but the disciplinary issues that take place, if that, does that have to be agreed on each new contract, or is it continuing?
It's continuing unless the parties change a provision within the contract. So if there's a provision within the contract that, say there's some such subject matter that is bargained at the next term bargaining, all of the other terms of the contract would remain in effect and agreed upon by the parties unless there's a specific provision that were to be changed.
Then let me say it in a different way. When Councilmember Reamer was talking about it, he said because it was a previous, negotiated contract that it would just continue. If Montgomery County or the Fraternal Order of Police or whatever organization, if they, either one of the two parties said, no, we don't want this to continue, then at that point, doesn't that say that they have to agree to the new negotiations? Because one of the parties is saying, we don't want to keep this.
Well, you would have to present proposals at term bargaining and then make a determination as to which proposals you're going to take forward to the mediation and arbitration phase if you're not able to reach an agreement. And if, when you get to arbitration, it's the last best final offer by both parties.
Right.
And the arbitrator takes whichever one is the more reasonable. So if one side were to say, no, we don't agree to change that, and their last best final offer has that provision that remains, and the arbitrator takes that as the more reasonable one, then that language would remain in there. So it's not Montgomery County or any law enforcement agency or government couldn't just say, we no longer agree to these provisions. You have to bargain what you no longer agree to or bargain what you want to change.
Well, and I guess we're sort of saying the same thing in different ways. But my point is that if one of the parties said, we no longer want to do this, and the other party says, we want to keep it, at that point it becomes a jump ball, I would think, because it's a new contract. The fact that you had a contract previously, I mean, if you're, the fact that it was in a contract previously, does it say in the old contracts, and unless we discuss it, that it just carries forward?
So it's part of the both contract law and our collective bargaining law. But if one party wants to change it and you bargain it, if it's not taken forward to mediation and arbitration as a proposal to ultimately change, then it's not going to be changed. So just
But
because
it's not from a contract that would be in existence at that point.
But if you don't get to a point where there's ultimately language that is changed, either by one side agreeing with the other side, or getting to mediation and the mediator getting the parties to agree to certain language, or getting to arbitration where the language is changed, that doesn't just necessarily mean that the language is changed. There's a lot of proposals that go back and forth at the beginning of an arbitration or of term bargaining between parties where it doesn't end up getting to the mediation stage. So the language doesn't change because you brought up the proposal initially. You have to see it all the way through to the end, either to agreement or to an arbitrated award.
I understand. I don't not that I necessarily agree with that, but I understand. Thank you, Mr. President.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're right that if one party says, I don't like that provision, it becomes something that's subject to negotiation. What Ms. Roberts is explaining is sometimes things that are topics of discussion and negotiation that go back and forth, if there's no agreement on that provision or the total contract and you go to mediation and arbitration, then each side has to make a strategic decision as to what they want to include in the final offer. But you're right. If one side doesn't like any provision that's in the contract, it becomes something that's subject to bargaining, and the parties have to bargain about it in good faith. So I think you're right, what you said originally.
Well, and that becomes always the discussion. I mean, first off, you're dealing with hundreds or how many whatever matters you're dealing with, and at some point, what is more important than the other one that you're giving up in order to change things? I mean, and then at some point, we've said, my gosh, we've come a long way here. Let's give it on that one or not. So I appreciate that, but my point being that we could, or the county could negotiate. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much. So I want to ask a question that deals with what I assume is internal. But help me to understand this, because so if Officer A alleges that there was discrimination from Officer B, regardless of supervisor or not, is that treated as an internal or external?
If Officer A goes to the supervisor and says Officer B has been discriminating out in the field against people.
No, not against people, against them, against the other officer.
Against each other.
Right.
Oh, that wouldn't be an external complaint. That would be an internal complaint.
Right.
And
so
hostile
therefore,
environment or something like that.
But then, so therefore, not
Title
subject
VII.
to ACC or PAB, correct?
No, it wouldn't be.
And so part of my concern, just follow my train of thought here, is that oftentimes behavior is not only exhibited in the workplace, but then also exhibited in their job as well. And so from that standpoint, a person who is discriminating against a person who is on the job with them is more likely to also discriminate against a similar type of person out in their workplace as well. And that is my concern. If there are behaviors that are exhibited that aren't then subject to the scrutiny of ACC PAB that could put potential other folks at risk, it is something that we need to consider. And so from that standpoint, and again, I'm sorry to muddy the waters, but I wanted to bring this up last week and wasn't able to do so. But I really do think that that part of it is a piece that we're missing, because we've seen this in other jurisdictions across the region, to where similar sorts of things have happened. And I don't want to name, I'm not trying to disparage other communities, but we've seen it highlighted in terms of massive lawsuits. And so my concern is that it's an indicator of a much larger issue that may be at play, which directly falls into what it is that we're trying to do when it comes to ACC PAB. And so just wanted to get your thoughts there, AC Frank or Mr. Drummer.
Well,
Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, discrimination complaints based on a protected characteristic have themselves have many other avenues for review besides the internal police department. There's the County Human Rights Commission. There's a state commission on, I forget what they call it. They've changed the name recently. And then there's the EEOC. There's federal courts. There's state courts. That for avenues for those kind of, that's an employment-related complaint.
I wish it were that simple, Mr. Drummer, but the concern I have is that it's really not just an employee issue at that point because of the interaction with the public. And because that interaction, as we've seen, unfortunately, can sometimes go in these directions that aren't positive for us as a community and for those individuals. And so from that standpoint, it is different in the sense of just your generic, ride-on bus driver who says something to somebody disparagingly as they get on the bus and they continue to get on the bus and they file a complaint or whatever the case would be, or another ride-on bus driver who says something to another person. And then they may, and I don't mean to pick on transportation because I see Mr. Conklin here, but just giving an example of something. But I mean, this is very different, and we've seen how this has been played out over and over again. So I want to push back a little bit that it shouldn't be as simple as just an internal. I understand that those mechanisms are there, but I think that the overall goal of what it is that we're trying to do here by the involvement of both ACC and PAB is to make sure that we can get at what may be seen as a greater problem and address those issues from an investigatory manner and make sure that those same behaviors that were exhibited in the workplace may not be something that's also exhibited in the interaction with the public as well.
Well, once this may not satisfy you, but once the action hits a member of the public and a member of the public complains about it, it then becomes an external complaint. Once that happens.
I don't want to wait for those kinds of things, because one of those negative interactions could be one of those that we don't want to see play out in our community.
Well, I will say it's unfair to say, I think it's unfair to say that, well, if it's an internal complaint, it's not going to get investigated and it's not going to there'll be no discipline. I mean, that's not true. I mean, there is a system set up for that, and, I don't think anybody in the police department would tell you, well, we ignore that stuff because it didn't come from a member of the public.
AC Frank, let me ask you a question. When we have an incident like this, do we also look at the interactions between the officer and the community at that point once we've seen, or is it just solely the investigation is based on the interaction between those two officers? I.e., so if Officer A says Officer B was racially discriminating against Officer A, do we also look at interactions between Officer B and members of the community and see if there are any other types of complaints that may be similar to what Officer A is alleging happened from Officer B?
So as far as the investigation goes, we can look into their previous interactions. We look in what's in their IAD files to see if there's anything else.
Let me just ask you, as I want to be very clear, can or do?
It depends on the circumstances, but I haven't been an investigator for IAD. I've been a homicide investigator. I would tell you it's just as serious as an investigation for us. So it should be and most likely is looked at, that history. Now, there are things that we have to be careful with, looking at body-worn camera and other items, because there are some controlling things there. But we can look for cause, and we do look at that. I think, and one of the things that Bob brought up that I do want to reassure everyone, that Chief Jones and the assistant chiefs, we take very seriously these investigations. There is a process. I can tell you, since I've been assistant chief, I've been involved with a couple of cases that talk about the items that you've brought up. They get investigated fully every time, and we as assistant chiefs then make recommendations to the chiefs. So there is a process, but I do respect what we're trying to do with the PAB and the ACC, but I do want to reassure the public that in Montgomery County, as you said, other agencies, maybe it doesn't get the light of day. It certainly gets the light of day with Montgomery County Police.
Well, I just want to close by saying I've actually worked with some of your great district commanders who have done the right thing. I just want to make sure that it's a standard practice for all, and make sure that it's something that certainly is addressed. I don't have any amendments at this point, Mr. President, but I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's important for us as we're moving forward to try and establish. I think that part of what Councilmember Reamer is going to be proposing will help with the monthly reports to the ACC and PAB, will help assist with some of that, but certainly we just want to be on record as acknowledging the fact that we need to ensure that there's more sunshine that's happening with these types of incidents to stave off it from bleeding into our interactions with the public.
And council member, if I can follow up on another piece of legislation that goes with the PAA, is the early warning system and mandating those. So we're expanding. We're actually looking at different products now for being our early warning system, so that complaints like this that come in, like you say, go into the system, and there's different queues on it, citizen complaints. Actually, there's many things that you can put into these systems now that will throw up red flags on individuals. So that's another piece of legislation on the state side to help with what you're talking about.
Okay, so amendments, that's a good segue, but let me just say a couple of things from 30,000 feet. This will be an entirely new system, and so we will not have thought through every issue or every circumstance, and we will have to learn from those different circumstances and make adjustments as necessary as a body through the council, and this next council will have the opportunity to make changes if necessary. And obviously our General Assembly will be following this closely as well, and we've already spoken to the awkwardness of the coordination between the state and local jurisdictions to make sure this is enacted appropriately, and the timing is certainly challenging as we're all feeling at the moment. But I do think we've made good progress. And Mr. Drummer, if you could just repeat, there is at least one staff recommendation in the packet for an amendment, and then, as Councilmember Rice noted, Councilmember Reamer has an amendment that he'd like to move forward as well. But could you repeat the one that you have discussed at the beginning of the presentation this morning, and see if any of my colleagues would like to move that forward?
Yes, reading on page 20 of the staff memo, the language would be, the new language would be adding a transition clause that said the act takes effect on the date at which it becomes law and must apply to eligible complaints based on an incident occurring on or after July 1, 2023 against a police officer who is covered by a collective bargaining agreement entered into before June 30, 2022 that includes a different disciplinary system, and July 1, 2022 against any other police officer. And that's an attempt to codify the grandfather clause in the state law.
Colleagues, can I get a motion to move the staff recommendation forward? Moved by Councilmember Katz, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. Any discussion on the staff recommendation? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the staff recommendation, please raise your hands.
I vote yes.
And Councilmember Tawanda votes yes as well. It works. It works. Good. All right. That moves us on. We've had a memo circulated here by Councilmember Reamer. I will turn it over to you to describe that memo and this amendment proposal.
All right, thank you so much. This is an amendment that just addresses the ability of the public and the council to see how the process is working and to establish additional transparency around complaints. So the intent of the amendment is to ensure that the ACC can plan its workload and monitor all complaints, and that they will see what has been, we can all see what is before them. So the text of the amendment is to amend lines 209 to 212 as follows. Duties of the law enforcement agency. The law enforcement agency must investigate and submit a written investigation report to the Administrative Charging Committee for each complaint received by the agency or referred to the agency by the Police Accountability Board. Each law enforcement agency must submit a monthly report to the Administrative Charging Committee detailing complaints received and the status of each investigation. So it's the highlighted part, I think, that's new. Is that right, Bob? Or
Yeah, each law enforcement agency must submit a monthly report.
Right. Sorry
That's
about
the
that.
new language.
So it's just that a monthly report is sent to the ACC detailing all complaints received and the status of each investigation. And that will enable us to get a view into whether investigations are moving along in a timely manner. There is concern that they would not be conducted in a timely manner, but I think we need to start here with the assumption that everyone will do their job, and we're going to hold them accountable for that. And so without access to information, we can't hold them accountable. And so this isn't intending to empower the ACC to do that. So
Second.
I move that.
Moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Katz is in the queue to speak. Did you want to speak to this?
I did, thank you. First off, I have no
If you could turn your
problem-
mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Councilmember Reamer,
I have
if
a
you could turn
problem
your
turning
mic
on
off.
my microphone. I have no problem with the intent of the legislation, but my first question is, would the county agency, would they be able to do this without additional staffing? Is that? And then my next question is about the municipal agencies. How do we have any authority over them?
So I spoke to Chief Jones this morning. He actually doesn't have an issue with this amendment. He thinks it's okay. The question we did have, and Assistant Chief Frank just raised, is I presume this meant complaints that would be coming before
gotta get a little closer.
I presume this meant complaints that would be coming before the ACC, not a broader universe of complaints. Is that my understanding the amendment correctly?
I was asking myself that question as I was reading it out. Do you mean you assume that this means complaints from the public?
Yes. Like these would be complaints that would be coming before the ACC, so that they had I think as you alluded to, this would be them having knowledge about what was coming up for them in terms of the investigations that might be coming before them. But obviously, as it's written, it could presumably imply a broader universe of complaints like the internal investigations that we talked about before. So I think
I think the answer is, as written, that's what is intended to do. I think I have now in the back of my mind a question as to how we will all know about the internal disciplinary process and what this, the volume of complaints from an officer that initiated a charge might be. And we don't yet have an answer for that. But this is intended to be for the public.
In an answer to, do we have authority over the municipal departments?
That's a good question.
Can it get a good answer?
Yeah. Oh, boy, you'd have to ask somebody else for a good answer. I think arguably we do, because I think this is sort of implementing the state law, but I'll say this, that there's no enforcement mechanism.
That was my next question.
Who's going to arrest who, I guess, is the question.
If they don't submit a report, each month to the Administrative Charging Committee, there's not anything in this law that would make them do it.
Right. I think bottom line on this is that the intent is the right intent. I mean, it should be to the benefit of every department that the public is aware of what is and isn't going on, as well as us and people who are in the oversight. So I have no problem with it. I think in practice it might be more of a problem than in theory, because if to Mr. Drummer's point, if they send it on the 31st day, what are you going to do about it? So but I think that the intent, I will certainly support this. I think the intent is there. As I say, beyond the intent, I don't know what's going to happen. But anyhow, I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too appreciate the intention of the amendment, but just want to drill down a little bit more. Is my understanding the state legislation, the state law says that investigations and complaints must be completed within 1 year and 1 day. That's correct? But then there is no other mechanism to ensure that the process moves forward in a timely manner. Is that correct as well?
One clarification, the state law says that the investigation and the charges within 1 year and 1 day. So under the new PAB-ACC, at least you will have to get the investigation to the ACC with sufficient time so that they can review all the documents, body camera, the entire investigation, to have that charge come prior to 1 year and 1 day, making it a little bit more complicated. At least the original iteration of the draft ACC language kind of factored in the fact that you may have potential settlement negotiations that occur, but in order for that to be effectuated under the current state law, you would have to take that potential settlement back to the ACC for the ACC to agree to those amended charges in order for there to be a settlement. So then in theory, you would have to really have moved through that entire process a little bit sooner so that you can have that amended charge done within a year and a day.
Thank you for that. And so is it your estimation that this amendment would help move that process by having some timely updates on the process itself? Understanding there's lots of dynamics, and we are in talking about personnel issues to some degree as well.
So would this amendment help move those investigations along? Is that your question?
So there are multiple timelines, right?
Right.
And so it has been expressed to me that the timelines might lapse for various reasons. And so wanting to make sure that the ACC and the PAB have sufficient time to work through the processes in which they're charged, it seems to me that a monthly report, while understanding it might have other personnel issues, just on the administrative aspect, but it also seems to me that that would help make sure that the other timelines are met.
It could. I think it would be more with the agencies as to whether or not it would help them in doing it.
I can only speak for Montgomery County Police. I think it puts, again, the reason Chief Jones agrees with it is it does put accountability and pressure on us to perform what we've been doing. I will say we do have timelines now. We do meet our timelines. They don't extend past that timelines we have, and it's a good thing that we don't, because otherwise we lose the opportunity to hold people accountable that really need to be held accountable. So again, with this amendment, it does add extra accountability, because then the ACC or PAB could bring up that, not that I think this would happen, but hey, you're dragging your feet on this, what's going on? So it's another layer.
And I appreciate that admission, because that is what we're trying to figure out. I think the amendment sponsor, I'll yield to Mr. Raymer.
If I could just make one quick amendment or clarification. Under the new law, the ACC must make so you have the year and a day with the charge, but the ACC must make a determination for further review within 30 days after the law enforcement agency completes their investigation. So the ACC has to make their initial determination within those 30 days unless they need additional time. And the investigation and ACC charging decision must be complete within that year and a day.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Raymer. Yeah.
Thank you. We certainly initiated this amendment thinking about additional timelines that would put a shorter timeline on the process to move its way through. And we concluded that there are so many variables in each of these cases that it would just be a challenge to put an additional restriction in, and that what would be an appropriate way to begin was transparency, so that we can observe the functionality of the system and then find out if there are problems, and then we can tailor solutions to those problems. So that's the spirit of this amendment.
I appreciate that as well. And so I'll support this with the understanding that while the department has its own internal timelines, we'll see what the administrative burden might be. But ultimately, we want to make sure that these boards are functioning and have the information in a timely manner, so that we don't lose sight of cases that might fall outside of the state timeline of that 1 year and 1 day. Dr. Stockman?
Yeah, I think that one of the nice things that also potentially about having a reporting of the status update is you're going to have a constellation of different departments conducting totally separate, unrelated investigations that are all going to come to a centralized body, and they're going to have to, for scheduling purposes, be ready to receive multiple complaints within a short window. So I think it will help for them in terms of developing their workload for a period of time. There are almost assuredly going to be months when multiple investigations are completed that they need to schedule multiple meetings within that month to meet the time frame that Ms. Roberts talked about of having from when they receive it processed within a month. So if they're receiving 3 or 4 complaints because two from municipality, 2 from the county, for example, all within the same time period, that will create an administrative burden for the ACC to complete in a timely fashion. And so this should help them better understand when those periods are coming.
I agree. Thank you. I yield back.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Anybody else have any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion move forward by Councilmember Reamer, please raise your hands.
I vote yes.
And that is unanimous among all those present and virtual. So with that, and Councilmember Harker wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe it was on the whole time. Yes, it's nice to hear the voice of Oz coming in. Mr. Drummer, I don't really know where to go with this. I'm a fan of having deadlines in legislation. You and I have talked about this before. The legislative body is always limited in our ability to enforce deadlines that are required of the administration, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have deadlines in legislation. I've been in too many hearings to count, starting in Annapolis, where people would argue we shouldn't pass a law because it's unenforceable. It may be unenforceable to stop every speeder on the highway, but nobody argues we shouldn't have speed limits. So can you talk about what are the options of a legislative body? There's no downside to putting deadlines in the law. We have had many conversations over the last several years. What happens when the executive branch spends money that's not authorized or doesn't do a report back to protect the minority female disabled program, for example, or other things like that? What is the waterfront of options because I'm getting questions from the public about why we have the body camera bill that I sponsored with so many colleagues' support after the abuse of the child in East Silver Spring in my district. That's full of deadlines of when those videos get reviewed, when they get reported to county leadership and the public, and when investigations have to be closed in alignment with best practices from U.S. Department of Justice. If those aren't followed, what are our options as a legislative body?
Are we talking about deadlines for the police department to complete the investigation?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, yeah.
Sure. That's what we're talking about.
Sure. But I get that question often.
Yeah. Well, one is, if you put in a deadline and it doesn't have any enforcement mechanism, it's considered directory. There's no way to, nothing happens particularly. It's there.
What are the
can
enforcement
complain
mechanisms?
about it. The problem here is a deadline here, like there's a deadline in the state law for this process to be done with the Administrative Charging Committee within 1 year and 1 day. Well, I would expect which I won't be, but if I was representing an individual police officer who was charged with discipline and it didn't get done in 1 year and 1 day, I would say, too late, you can't do it. That would be the enforcement mechanism. The person would not be held accountable for whatever the complaint is. So if you put a deadline in here for the police department to complete the investigation, and for some reason they don't get it done in time, they're going to see that argument from the police officer's counsel saying, too late. You can't send it to the charging committee. You didn't meet your deadline.
They will have forfeited their opportunity.
Well,
right?
I think the police department would argue no,
But
and
the
they'd have a
officer,
dispute about
his
it.
or her lawyer would argue
But
yes.
it would be an extra argument
Right.
that, the problem here is a deadline here. I mean, the police department has a really strong interest in making sure they get it to the ACC in a timely manner, because the police department, if they did an investigation and they believe that discipline is warranted from the investigation, they've got a strong interest in holding that person accountable, and they're going to want to make sure it gets there in time. with whether or not you put a deadline here in the bill. I think in this case, a deadline, for completing an investigation is a little dangerous, because I think it's going to create an argument for the police officer that's potentially being investigated that too late, can't do it. You could put in a deadline that allows the police department to ask for more time, but they can, I guess the ACC could grant them more time. You could do that, but I'm not sure what difference that's going to make in the real world. I think there is a statutory deadline here of 1 year and 1 day. I think the departments, I say plural, have a very strong interest in making sure they get something to the ACC, and we have a very strong interest, I think, generally, as the county government, and to make sure that the Administrative Charging Committee is equipped to handle these things in a timely basis to get them done within that 1 year and 1 day. I think everybody's under the gun for that. And the obvious result is, if you don't get it done, there's going to be a really strong argument that you're too late and you can't enforce the discipline. It's going to be like a statute of limitations. And how the courts would ultimately rule on that, I don't know.
Right.
It, of course, wouldn't stop a lawsuit from occurring, because that you have 3 years. But it would stop the disciplinary procedure, which the department's got a very strong interest in moving forward.
In that case, yeah, the department's interest and the public interest converge in that case, right? Because the department wants to complete the investigation,
right?
Exercise its rights, essentially. And that's another argument for Mr. Reamer's amendment, to have monthly reports so we really know what the workload is. We can stay on top of it. We can provide additional staffing or funding if we need to, et cetera. But just to the larger question of enforceability, if the agency doesn't submit this monthly report to us, what are our options?
Well, for the county police, I mean, I think, there are options. I mean, for the council to be insisting that, what's going on, pulling the chief here, how come this hasn't happened?
Complain.
For
Yes.
the executive, obviously, he's got the authority to start firing people. And so for the county police, there's not legal enforcement per se, but there really is. For municipal police departments, we have very little control over them.
Ultimately, it's up to the executive to enforce the deadlines.
Right. I mean,
We
you
have
would
limited
go to
ability
the
do that.
could go to the police chief of the municipality, the mayor, or whatever, and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" But we can't do anything about it.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to hear that from you.
Yeah.
That's been my perception. But if the public is asking, whose job is it to enforce the deadlines in many of these cases, our ability to do that is limited. I can't get AC Frank to arrest anybody. The administration has to enforce its own deadlines, essentially, that we put in any law, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just checking. I might.
And I'll go back to what, at least for Montgomery County Police, and I think for the other police executives, the other chiefs, the municipalities, it's a heavy burden. I mean, there's no. We're going to meet our burden because it's not the look we want in Montgomery County. Ultimately, Chief Jones, the Internal Affairs Division, reports to him, and he'll be ensuring that they meet deadlines to get it to the ACC. I think one of the things we have to look at the beginning, and I've heard many of you talk about this, is what the actual workload looks like for the ACC and how they conduct their business. So I think there's going to be some collaboration. We're going to work on our business process to ensure that we can get investigations to them with plenty of time, because at the end of the day, ultimately, it's going to come back on the chief of police and assistant chiefs like me about why we didn't meet a burden of a deadline, which again is very powerful. But there will be some play at the beginning as far as collaborating, figuring out what that takes. When I go to do well, first of all, when I did findings as a commander, it would take me hours to review the entire case, sometimes days. I know other commanders, it's taken them weeks to review these files, depending on the allegation. And then as assistant chiefs in the current process, again, it takes hours and days to review this stuff. So we're mindful of that. And I know Chief Jones is engaged with the captain of our internal affairs to look at making sure that we have the best process to get this to the ACC, to the PAB and the ACC.
All the more reason we should stay, good amendment, we should stay on top of this from the beginning because it's a new program. We don't really know. We need to match up the workload to the resources. But then you all actually have to apply the resources too.
Correct. And I think for us, generating the report, it's a whole lot. It's essentially an Excel spreadsheet, and then any comment. I can't. Again, the other municipalities have very good programs in place, and I don't expect them to say that this would be a heavy lift providing this report. But again, I can't speak for them.
Right.
But based on technology today and the different systems that I've seen, we should be okay.
And whether it's large or small, it's good for us and the public to know. So thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
All right. We are obviously way behind today, but Mr. Drummer, we've walked through the items that remain outstanding. One item that we have received a staff recommendation that we not reconcile at this point as we go to final vote is there seems to be agreement and consensus among colleagues that there be some level of compensation, but there has not yet been agreement on exactly what that is or what that looks like. But the agreement is that we, as we go through the county's budget process, we work collaboratively with the executive branches and arrive at a number that recognizes the unique elements of this job, but doesn't unintentionally trigger unintended consequences with the other 90-plus boards and commissions, which are all very important as well. So it's going to be an analysis and a juggling of that, and we're not prepared to do that at the moment. So we will acknowledge in the legislation that there will be compensation, but we're not going to stipulate the amount of that compensation. I just want the public to know that was a discussion we had last time that we will likely not reconcile before we vote on this next week. Mr. Drummer, was there anything else in the packet at this point, acknowledging we're about an hour over, that you would like to highlight at this time?
No, I just want to clarify the point that what's in the bill now is no compensation for PAB members, which would allow you to put compensation in the budget. But the one proviso is if you wanted to apply to the first members who are appointed, it needs to be done in this year's budget.
Okay.
You can't wait a year because you can't change it or start it up in the middle of a term of office.
Okay, so it can be done. And as I noted last time, probably should be, just so that we, make clear what the expectations are in advance. But I think there was some concern that whether or not the timing would work for us to be able to do this in time to be able to vote on this next week. So what I'd like to propose, because it's not worth debating at the moment with specific numbers without any sort of analysis, is that there be some recommendations from staff on some amounts based on some criteria that's yet to be determined that we can react to, discuss, and then consider adding as an amendment before the final vote. If we could do that, that'd be helpful. I see that, yes, Mr. Stoddard, Dr. Stoddard.
Council President, I just wanted to, so given the timeline for our posting, we've developed a full timeline. You will have the budget process to review this before there are appointments that come over. We're probably not talking about appointments until certainly probably June-ish, just given the time frame. I also wanted to note that we did meet with the Office of Management and Budget, and we are doing an analysis as you all are approving amendments to this bill as to what the costs will be for full-time dedicated staff and those things, just to make sure that we're in proper alignment. So we'll be able to share those in advance of the budgetary process as well. And I know Assistant Chief Frank had one comment too.
Council President, I just wanted to come back around because I don't think I gave you a very clear answer on internal versus external and what goes to the PAB and ACC, because again, we have the MPIA, which affects things. But again, just to be clear, external complaints go to the PAB, ACC. There are things that will come in as internal complaints. They happen all the time. Our executives, our sergeants, even other officers observe something, report something, it goes to internal affairs. Those would not go to the PAB, ACC right now. However, in the MPIA process, when they're dealing with citizens, that those would eventually come out in that process if someone requested that information. But I wanted to clarify because it does get confusing the different regulations. They don't quite match up at the state level. So I hope that clarifies that.
Thank you. That is helpful. All right, then we will. Councilmember Reamer.
I just wanted to suggest we might want to specify the compensation level in at least a minimum in the bill because of the advertising for the positions. If we are waiting and through the budget process, we just want to make sure that when we advertise for these, that the compensation level is stipulated. So if that can match up with the budget process, we can ask staff to think through when we would advertise. If the budget process is adequate for that, then that's fine. But if not, I'm inclined to think it's not. We should.
Our intention is to assuming you all were going to vote on the 29th, our plan was to launch on the 30th, the recruitment process.
So I'd suggest the universe of options is pretty small here. It's either $16,000 or less, I would imagine, because the ACC is $16,000. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So it's going to be a small difference between what we. So maybe next week when we take final action, we could address that.
Yeah, and Councilmember Katz brought up, and we'll need to follow up on this, is answering the question for somebody, a resident who is not in a position to be able to receive compensation directly from the county, would having compensation prohibit them from applying, or would it, what logistically would we need to be done to make sure we don't unintentionally prevent people from applying we want to make sure are representative of our entire community. So that does remain outstanding. Yeah, Councilmember Katz.
Yeah, and I'll be very quick, Mr. President. Thank you. My concern is if we put in compensation and the person who could not receive that money by federal government rules says I'll do it, but I'm not gonna take the stipend or the money itself. Does that still mean that they can't do it? Because if the way our system is set up, if someone decides that they don't want a salary for whatever, then they just donate it back or whatever they're doing. But they're actually taking it to donate it back. So I don't know how I would like to know, let me say it in the positive, I would like to know how we can do this so that it would be legal for someone to be able to serve as we've suggested, but that they might not be able to receive the compensation, and especially if it's written into the legislation itself. So I know it's a layered concern, but to me it's a legitimate one. Thank you.
Okay. So Mr. Drummer, if you can follow up on that, it's a bit of a homework assignment. And Councilmember Jawando has chimed in. Let's see how this works. Councilmember Jawando.
The voice of Oz. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I just wanted to say I brought this up last week that I'm prepared to move the 16,000, but I want to work on a compromise. I think to Councilmember Reamer, he kind of made a similar point. This is there's 9 members, if I think I'm remembering correct, Mr. Drummer.
Yes.
So that would be $144,000. But actually minus the one person who serves on both, the designee of the ACC. That's not it's not insignificant, but it's not a huge number. But if it's something less than that, we can figure that out. But I think that should be on the table as an option. I would just ask that folks don't have to think that's the right number, but I think it should be as one of the options that we consider in the packet next week. But I agree with Mr. President that we should put it in the legislation from the beginning to agree with your point that we should signal that this is serious and for the budgetary reasons. So thank you.
Okay, so that is the one outstanding item that we'll try to reconcile before we take the final vote through roll call next week. And so we'll work between now and then to have something for everybody to react to. All right, colleagues, thank you so much. And I'll just note as we wrap up, the spirit of cooperation here has been extraordinary. I really want to thank everybody who has been engaged in this discussion. We've made a lot of progress. Thank you. All right, we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a work session on the I-270 Corridor Forward Plan, item number 5. We have representatives from Park and Planning as well as the Department of Transportation. I see Chairman Anderson and Director Conklin. And I will turn it over to Dr. Orland to walk us through the packet. And why don't we aim to finish this session by 12:20?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. This is the I-270 Corridor Forward Plan. The idea in this plan was to try to take all the ideas that have been out there for the last several years to try to improve transit, particularly in the upper I-270 corridor, and prioritize them. The committee has met a couple of times since then. The T&E committee has, and they've come up with the unanimous recommendation. The recommendation is as follows. One is the top priority is to complete the Viersville Road BRT and the entire 355 BRT. As you know, the county executives recommended funding the entire Viersville Road BRT and part of the 355 BRT, and including funds in the CIP and has recommended CIP for the design, the rest of it. The next priority would be to create a series of corridor connectors to replace the single line of the Corridor Cities Transitway. There are actually pieces of these corridor connectors which you could line up as being at least part of the Corridor Cities Transitway, but it would no longer be one continuous line from Clarksburg all the way down to through the King Farm area down into Shady Grove. The best way to picture says 1,000 words. If you look on Circle 31, the very last page of the packet, you'll see the network that's being recommended. And this network would include, to the extent possible, dedicated bus lanes on all of those routes, ultimately. And there's no priority amongst those routes. It depends on what the demands are at the time in terms of which ones would go first and which ones would come later. And then there was a series of other recommendations which are longer in term, including the possible extension of Metro Rail to Germantown, as well as improving, I wouldn't say long-term to do mark improvements. There still can be mark improvements as we go along, but actually reaching the point of creating a third track or that level of service would be more in the longer term, as well as the possibility of extending monorail to Frederick. It's not been ruled out, but it would not have the same priority as the corridor connectors. With that, unless anyone has any opening comments,
yes,
I was going to turn it over to...
Actually, before that, Dr. Orland, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Hucker, the chair of our Transportation and Environment Committee.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Dr. Orland. I don't have much to add, but just on behalf of the entire T&E committee, I really want to thank the planning chair, the planning commissioners, the planning staff, and Director Conklin and all his staff for working on this. I wish everything worked this way, where we have a difference of opinion occasionally between planning staff and an agency. I was happy to, on behalf of the committee, give these two players additional time to work out the differences at the staff level, and they came back to the committee with all the differences really worked out in a product that we all could get behind. So I'm really excited about how important Corridor Forward is. We all have been made very aware of the problems and the on the I-270 corridor for a very long time, and the amount of attention that it needs from the county government and the planning board in particular. And I think our residents should look at this plan in detail and listen today and feel like there's some relief on the way and good news on the way. So I'm really happy and grateful for all the work that's gone into it. I also wanted to just mention that I'm glad that the product you came up with addressed a lot of the concerns that came forward from the city of Gaithersburg and the city of Rockville, and also that you took our recommendations too for adding more about Mark Rail in there as well. I feel like Mark Rail has really been overdue for more attention, and many of us have advocated for greater service for quite a while at the state level and at the county level. And now with the progress of Delegate Solomon's good bill that's already crossed over to the Senate and the cross-file from Senator Beidel, anybody who rides Mark or aspires to ride Mark in the future is going to see an improved service in the future and a lot more money spent on Mark, which is really good news, I think, for the whole county, whether you ride Mark or not. So anyway, grateful for all your work on this and for the collaboration, and turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice, did you want to speak now or after the president? Yeah, Councilmember Rice.
If I could, and I just want to echo the comments of the chair. One of the reasons why I first ran for office is when my wife and I moved to Germantown and we saw so many of the inequities that exist, so many things that I was fortunate enough to be able to benefit from living and growing up in the down county. And what I saw was woefully lacking in the up county. And, first it was a hospital, but it was always about infrastructure. It was always about things that we knew were owed to community members who oftentimes just couldn't afford to live in the down county and were looking for an affordable place to stay here in Montgomery County. And over the years, I've been really proud to see folks that have collectively worked together, understanding that we are trying to address an issue that is impacting a sector of our community and delivering over and over again on things that made people's quality of life better. And that's what this has always been about. And so I really want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and all of the T&E committee and all of my colleagues and all of the partners who are sitting at the dais in front of us, who really do get and understand that this is about equity. It is one of the things when Councilmember Navarro led the effort about racial equity and social justice, I think about the time when I decided to, when the pandemic first hit, ride the ride-on bus and see who was still during the height of the pandemic having to go to work each and every day and the commutes that they would still have to take, and why it was so important for us to make sure that those routes were enhanced, that we were doing the things that we needed to ensure that those people who were putting themselves at risk could still get to and from work to support their families. That's what a lot of this is about. It is about the basic necessities that people look at each and every day to just make sure that they can get their families taken care of, put food on their tables, and we really are doing that. And a plan like this summarizes so many of those pieces and highlights for us how we can continue to deliver on those things that we know are important to enhance the quality of life for those that are in our mid and up county regions. And so I'm very appreciative of allowing me to be a part of some of the work sessions to talk about this. I look forward to handing off this and the work in making sure that this all comes to fruition to a person who will follow in my footsteps. But certainly just want to thank you, because laying the foundation and have the visionary goals that are laid out in this plan and some concrete things about what it is that we need to do are going to happen is just tremendous. And it certainly gives me a better comfort level when it comes to stepping away, knowing that we are in a much better place than it was when I got to the council in 2010. So just wanted to say thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. President. And thank you very much, Chair Hucker.
Concrete, no pun intended. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. I really want to compliment the planning department and the chair for the vision to want to do this project. First of all, they say good luck is being prepared for an opportunity, and you have laid a lot of groundwork through this. And MCDOT, I think you were already hard at work on building a model for many of these corridors, and everything is converged with this shovel-ready project idea for BRT that will connect from Germantown to downtown Wheaton. And it is part of this plan, and it is building on our highest ridership corridors. So there are a lot of difficult issues right now about heavy rail, and we want people to shift back to heavy rail ridership. Some parts of our transit network have not been as affected through the pandemic and still have very high ridership. And the bus systems in certain areas are among those. And so one of the, I think, breakthroughs of this process has been bringing the county together, MCDOT, planning, county council, on a project idea which is in the capital budget. And we have a recommendation from the county executive to use the anticipated toll funding to get this project going, along with federal grant funding. And so that we wouldn't be able to be at that place if you hadn't been doing this work along the way. And I think we've got a strong consensus opportunity now to fund a transit infrastructure project that's going to make a really big difference while keeping some of the long-term big think ideas on the board. And we'll, dive into those as the moment arises. But this is a plan to me that emphasizes taking action over, drawings on paper, and I look forward to seeing what comes next. Thank you.
I see Chairman Anderson would like to speak. Chairman Anderson.
I'll make it quick. I do want to underscore what's been said about the cooperation. Chris has been an excellent partner and really value his friendship, professionalism, dedication, and always takes such a constructive approach to working with us, which we very much appreciate, and that was in evidence here. I also want to say about Dr. Orland, who probably taught me almost everything I know about transportation. And even though sometimes I disagree with him, I just want to make it clear that I understand that he has forgotten more about transportation than I'm ever going to know. And really just appreciate his goodwill towards not just the planning department, but his public spiritedness in teaching so much of us who've become engaged in these issues, so much about how transportation planning and policy works, and that, again, was so helpful in this. The last thing I want to point out is this point that Mr. Rice is making about equity. This plan baked in equity in every way, in racial, socioeconomic, and regional. It's not just about delivering transit to the Up County, although I do think it takes major steps forward to figuring out how to do that in the near term and prioritizing how these investments can be made to deliver transit service to the Up County. But the analysis that was done by our staff in this plan incorporated from day one the idea of serving racially, socioeconomically neglected parts of the county, delivering service to people who really rely on transit, don't necessarily have access to cars. I think that will be in evidence as we walk through this, and the insight that we could deliver high-quality transit service to Montgomery Village, to connect the Veers Mill Corridor all the way from Wheaton, all the way up through Rockville into the Great Seneca Science Corridor, and also onto the 355 Corridor. I think we really had some path-breaking insights that were driven by the I just can't say enough about functional planning. Jason obviously was behind the SSP and all the work that we did on ending the schools moratorium, really some path-breaking work there. And in this case, I think you're seeing the value of having a great transportation planning staff, and Jesse and Carrie and Jessica and Patrick, who's now gone, all the people who worked on this plan, I think have not only given us a pathway to prioritize all the old ideas, but thrown some new ones in there in ways that are going to give us the path forward. So I just want to thank really earnestly Chris and Glenn and our staff and all the work that they did to get us to this point.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Katz, followed by Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I, too, want to thank you for all of your hard work on this. I think the goals are admirable. I appreciate the goals, but I am concerned about toll lanes. And I think that toll lanes are not something that leads to an equitable treatment. I believe that toll lanes really would have to be done first, and then the money would be, if they worked, and there's some question whether they ever really do. I mean, someone who's making a profit on toll lanes, which I'm not opposed to anybody making a profit. I ate many a lunch on profits, and I think that's certainly something that is the right way to do things. However, toll lanes the money would have to be collected first, and then eventually, maybe someday, perhaps, we would see the transit. I have no problem with transit being our goal here, but I do have a problem saying that if the toll lanes work, and there's some great question, if the toll lanes work, when we would ever get transit. And that's been part of the problem all along. And with part of the toll lanes is one of the things that's never mentioned is that WSSC, especially for 270, WSSC would have to move their lines. And that's several billions of dollars. And they said, well, that's not taxpayer money. It's coming from the same taxpayer. That the ratepayer is the same taxpayer as the people who are doing this. So there again, I have real mixed feelings. I agree with the goals. I have real mixed feelings how we're going to pay for it. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, a lot has been said, but I do want to add my sense of appreciation because many of these particular items that we have been deliberating on all do come together and connect and all lead, hopefully, towards a much better quality of life for all our residents. And I remember being so struck when we were receiving the presentation by the Redistricting Commission, and they did present actually data from the Planning Department regarding our demographic changes and our current snapshot of who we are here in Montgomery County. And so I just want to thank you so much, Mr. Anderson, for what you just said, because it is absolutely necessary but imperative that we bake this issue of equity everywhere, because it is about our constituents. I mean, it is about who we are. No longer is it something that we have to sort of add it to our thinking or our planning. It has to be absolutely embedded. And at the end of the day, it literally just improves the quality of life for everyone, right? It helps us move forward those goals of attracting business here to the county, of creating jobs, of making sure that young people do consider staying here in the county, because the issue of transit is not just for low-income people. It is something that everyone should feel, attracted to utilizing as a matter of just, again, quality of life. So to me, it is it's very exciting to see all these dots connecting time and time again as we seek to, set the stage for our county's future, and leveraging once again on all of those items that our residents talk to us about every single day, right? And access to, reliable transit, that is really critical and is so important. So thank you again for all your thinking and for the way that you have been positioning and presenting all of these types of proposals to us.
Thank you. Dr. Orland?
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse Cohn-McGowan, who's going to go through a 10-slide PowerPoint which summarizes the recommendations from the committee.
Great, thank you. Actually, if I may just add quickly, this is Carrie Sanders. I'm the Chief of Mid-County Planning, and I did want to also thank Dr. Orland and Chris Conklin, because I feel like this plan has been really positive and that we've collaborated really well. I also wanted to thank the T&E committee, because I think this plan is a stronger plan after we've went through the process with the T&E and got some good feedback. And I think what you're going to hear from Jesse today is how we've responded to that feedback and how that's made the plan a stronger plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Jesse.
Jesse Cohn-McGowan from the Planning Department, though I think you all don't see slides yet, so 1 second.
We're still trying to get it up. We had to do this morning. It worked. There we go. Yeah, all right.
You can go to the next slide, Glenn. So as Carrie mentioned, this slide deck is mostly going to talk about the changes we've made based on the feedback from the T&E committee, but I did just want to briefly reiterate the plan purpose as we start this discussion. So as you know, there are many master plan and hypothetical transit options that could improve connectivity and transit accessibility along the I-270 corridor, but the purpose of this project is to really identify a clear strategy for our resources. And so as part of this project, we prioritized transit options based on the county's economic, environment, and equity values. And we've already heard a bit today about how we've integrated equity into this plan. So you can go to the next slide. So we met with the T&E committee on February 28th as well as March 9th, and we're directed to work with our partners at MCDOT and council staff to achieve consensus both on the alignment of the corridor connectors as well as to reevaluate prioritization of the long-term transit options. So next slide. So 2 changes were made based on discussion with our partners. These revisions responded to the committee direction to what we did is we better integrated the corridor connectors with the Great Seneca Transit Network. And in addition, we thought about the connections to CCT communities and leveraging CCT dedications as part of the corridor connectors. And so the following slides will go into a bit of detail about those 2 items. So you can go to the next slide. So the corridor connectors have been modified and expanded both to align with locations planned for bus service through the Great Seneca Transit Network, which is currently in planning by MCDOT, as well as to align with locations that the network is already planning for dedicated bus lanes. And so just to orient you on the map here, what you see in the green dotted line is the Maryland 355 and Veers Mill Road BRTs. What you see in the blue hatched line is the corridor connectors. And then the black is showing the Great Seneca Transit Network, which is an enhanced bus network that's currently in planning by MCDOT. It's about 5 routes, primarily connecting Shady Grove Metro to the Life Sciences Center, particularly universities of Shady Grove. And so some of the key changes that we made as part of this collaboration was to update the corridor connector network to include Redland Boulevard and Picard Drive. I don't know, Glenn, if you can use your mouse on the screen to show it, but maybe that's not possible. No, I don't see a cursor. That's okay. Can you go back one? So to add Redland Drive and Picard as part of the corridor connectors. And so this better aligns with the Great Seneca Transit Network. We've also updated the corridor connector network to now run on Medical Center Drive in the Life Sciences Center to overlap with the routes for the Great Seneca Transit Network. And then we've added a new corridor connector that runs from I-370 to the Life Sciences Center along Fields Road to Coverly and Brochart Road. And much of this section was already planned for dedicated bus lanes as part of the Great Seneca Transit Network. So really we're aligning the two efforts of Corridor Forward, the corridor connectors, with the work that's already underway with MCDOT. So you can go to the next slide, please. Here we want to talk a little bit about how we've made edits to the corridor connectors to align with the Corridor Cities Transitway, or the master planned alignment for the Corridor Cities Transitway. So that's shown on the map in white with a black outline. And so you can see that there's quite a bit of overlap now between the two alignments. The corridor connectors allow for transit service to each of the communities that would have been served by the CCT, though while the corridor connectors do not envision just one single service from end to end, transit service would provide connections between different activity centers along the corridor. And so I'll just outline a few of the changes that we made. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we've updated the corridor connectors to now run on Redland Boulevard and Picard Drive. This is close to the, east-west road. You can see that it was King Farm Boulevard for the CCT, so we're really serving that community with the corridor connectors. In addition, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we've updated the corridor connectors to run on to Coverly and Brochart Road, the new Crown connector, and that aligns with the original CCT alignment as well. And then I also want to note here that we've updated our alignment through the PSTA site, the Public Safety Training Academy site, as well as the Bellward site. So we're providing two options here. We could either run on Great Seneca Highway or through those two sites, and that would be determined through subsequent planning processes. But again, you can see that that provides greater alignment with what was planned for the CCT and leverages some existing dedications. And then lastly, what we had previously presented on the corridor connectors did not include transit over the Dorsey Mill Bridge. So now moving up between Germantown and Clarksburg, kind of not in the inset on the left anymore. We're now recommending transit over the Dorsey Mill Bridge. However, we're not saying that building that bridge is part of the corridor connectors. When that bridge is constructed, it should have dedicated bus lanes, but that's not going to limit us from incremental implementation of the corridor connectors in the interim. So next slide, please. So lastly, and I imagine this might be the focus of our discussion, is how we've reorganized the recommendations. And so here you can see all of the recommendations that are included in Corridor Forward. Previously, the way that we discussed these recommendations was really kind of the top three priorities of Maryland 355 and Veers Mill Road BRT, the corridor connectors, and then the red line extension. But you can see that this has been reorganized into four categories. And so first, we have the recommended near-term transit network, and this reiterates what we'd previously prioritized, the 355 and Veers Mill Road BRTs, as well as the corridor connectors. But it also highlights the Great Seneca Transit Network, the North Bethesda Transitway, and continued bus service on I-270. And these are efforts that are all underway. There's current facility planning for the North Bethesda Transitway and funding for the Great Seneca Transit Network. And there's already bus service on I-270, but we're really recommending kind of increasing that as part of Corridor Forward. The next section of recommendations are the recommended long-term vision. And so previously we'd really just elevated the red line extension to this category, but now we're including the recommendations that were already in the plan related to MARC, but kind of highlighting them more strongly. So these recommendations continue to support the long-term potential for MARC Rail, moving towards bi-directional and midday service, as well as supporting new MARC stations at Shady Grove and White Flint. And then we have two additional categories of recommendations. The first are supporting recommendations. We really think of these as how do we make the transit network most successful? And so, for example, this is looking at ensuring that there's safe walking and bicycle access to transit, updating our land use plans and guidelines to encourage transit-oriented development, supporting incremental implementation, et cetera. And then the last category is looking at regional opportunities. So what are some transit projects that we'd really have to work with our regional partners to achieve? So these include studying an extension of the Purple Line west of Bethesda, designing the American Legion Bridge to support rail, as well as exploring a direct transit way connection to Frederick City. And so these are things where we don't necessarily know that we would see that we would take the lead on, but that we would be partners in advancing these opportunities in the future. And so just before I close, I do want to reiterate some of the points that you all have made about equity and how we've really thought about equity throughout this process. These recommendations provide high quality transit to communities that didn't previously have it. And in addition, by prioritizing transit over auto travel, we're putting our dollars towards people who are less likely to own a car and really making transit a more accessible, convenient option for travelers. And then lastly, we do have the recommendations related to land use have parameters related to discouraging displacement and how can we really encourage transit-oriented development without resulting in gentrification. So just want to thank you all for your time and thank you very much.
Well, Dr. Orland, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add three more comments really quick. I'll just back up for a second. First of all, in the area of Rockville, as Desi pointed out, the main corridor would following Goody Drive up to Picard Drive. In fact, I'll put this handy thing on. Here we go. Goody Drive to Picard Drive, then up to Redland Boulevard and up to the Shady Grove station there. However, you see the two other routes. There's the continuation of Goody Drive down to Route 355 and then down 355 along the 355 BRT corridor to the Rockville Metro Station, and the other would continue on Route 28 through Old Town, through the west end of Rockville. The idea here is that one of these two routes would be a corridor connector, not both of them. And so that'll be subject of a facility planning study later, obviously heavily involving the city of Rockville since they both are within Rockville. Second point is that there was concern raised by the city of Gaithersburg about where if Metro is extended, where the Metro station would be. The planning board staff final draft had said it would be at the fairgrounds east of Quince Orchard Road. The city would want to have it at Metropolitan Grove. This plan is more or less silent on this. What it basically says is that it kicks the can down the road, okay? What it means is that if Metro Rail is going to happen up that area, at that point there'll be a further determination as to whether it goes in one area or the other. And the final point is that although the idea is that there would be dedicated bus lanes, that would be the goal for all of these routes, based on, they're all going to be subject to facility planning, and it could be as a result of facility planning that we're not going to be able to do that in every case, in which case we think we could do something in the order of queue jumpers or some other way to provide faster service for buses. But all of these will go through that kind of screening process. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Council Vice President Glass, followed by Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, everybody, for the presentation. I enjoyed seeing the result of our collaboration at committee session, and I know that much of the time during the committee was focused on trying to set priorities and trying to limit that last slide down to a few key elements, but I think what has resulted is allowing us as a county the flexibility should various opportunities arise. You know, everything is important, if not to a certain community, definitely to a constituency, but as it relates to regional transportation, they each have their own purpose. We have to find the money for them. We have to find the land for them, but all of those all of those are part of different ventures. Right, so 355 BRT and Veers Mill BRT is something that we can do, and as has been noted, we will be doing that with an emphasis on equity, recognizing those are some of the highest usage areas with some of the highest rates of communities of color utilizing those bus lines and those corridors. And then when it comes to the MARC lines, there's a lot of work being done in Annapolis. And so I think following the lead or working in tandem with our state leaders to make sure that there is an additional line, perhaps on the Brunswick line or somewhere else, that we could then use as an opportunity. And then doing everything, as has been noted, with an eye towards road safety, that we can do all of these things while also enhancing the pedestrian access, the bike access, making it easier and safer, making it safer for drivers along those corridors. And then last point I'll say is that the regional aspect, that last part of the slide, things that are out of our control, unilateral control here at the council or even here in the county, whether it's the American Legion Bridge or other opportunities, I think we need to continue having those regional conversations because, as has already been noted, I think it's been a missed opportunity for us to create the BRT along Route 29, Colesville Road, on the eastern side of the county, but not have it extend into Howard County, where we know so many of those drivers along Route 29 are actually originating from. So as we continue these regional approaches, when we look at 355 BRT, let's have those conversations with Frederick, as we know that first section is going to be in the northern part. And so just reemphasizing those, but I think at the end of the day, maintaining the flexibility and the opportunity to seize opportunities as they come to fruition will be helpful. And I look forward to implementing as many of these as quickly as we can in the years to come. So thank you all. Good job.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. There's just several things. There's so many things here, but a few things that jump out to me. Since I have been an elected official in Montgomery County, people have said, what is the future extension idea with the red line? Why are we sitting on our hands while other jurisdictions in the region are extending their metro systems or around the country extending their similarly calibered heavy rail systems? I know there's a little skepticism about our ability to get the red line to Germantown. And I'm sure there is a marathon of work in between these 2 points. But I think prior to this planning exercise, the assumption that I'd always seen out there was, well, the red line should keep going north up 270 to Frederick. Your insight is that really Germantown is where the people are, Gaithersburg, Germantown. And if you're going to do an extension, you want to send the train where the people are instead of, the alternative. And I think that's really important. And you've observed also that the communities there are substantially communities of color, and let's serve everyone with transit. So I think that I have no idea what it's going to take to make this possible. I really don't. I was driving around Old Town a couple times in the last few days, seeing the tight fit there with some of those structures. I don't know what's really possible. And of course, right now we're talking about how to save Metro because there's not enough fare revenue to even fund the system because heavy rail ridership is decimated, in the wake of the pandemic. So for the short term, we're not realistically able to think seriously about extending these systems. We just want to maintain what we've got, but ideally that's a short-term situation, but we have no idea. Frankly, we have no idea what the 5 years from now, what hybrid work arrangements will be. So, or what commuter habits will be. But in any event, I like the idea of putting an extension on the board. And if you don't, have a vision, you're certain to stay where you are. And I think that's valuable. We did not in any way diminish the utility of MARC extension. And I think a lot of us believe MARC extension is vital. Like the red line extension, MARC extension probably needs a lot more rezoning than we have achieved so far. We recently did a MARC communities plan, and we allowed for a little more density around some of the metro stations. But I think one of the insights here is that, you would want a lot more riders. You'd want a lot more riders, and we ought to plan out a growth strategy for MARC as that becomes more possible. That would be a more transit-oriented growth policy around MARC. And we're not that aggressive today. So there's a lot of work ahead of any of these visions, but at least I think we've started to think some of those things through. There are other exciting ideas here about connecting to Virginia through a transit line. I think, in other words, a future extension of the Purple Line. I think that is super interesting, and would love to see us, start to develop that in a very preliminary way. And at the same time, I think you've focused our thinking for more immediate wins and potentially, or I suppose, resolving longstanding questions about the alignment of the CCT. That's pretty significant. Putting on board some of these more, they're singles instead of home runs, and hit a lot of singles, I think, is part of the vision for serving the up-county transit areas. And we should do that. I mean, the up-county lacks transit. That's a reality. Once you get north of Shady Grove, there isn't enough. And so here's a plan to give a community like Montgomery Village a direct connection into job centers, and hopefully a shot on the arm there for a community that would welcome having better access to jobs. So there's just a lot here, and I'm really pleased with it. And again, I appreciate the consensus around the 355 option, and look forward to seeing that move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate the coordination and collaboration. I really think that this process has shown what can happen when the smartest people working across county agencies work together in order to achieve a good outcome, and it's really been encouraging. I appreciate the fact that we've addressed some of the issues raised not only by Department of Transportation but by our municipal partners and others, and appreciate planning's work to collaborate and to adjust, because I think that has been a key part of this. And I also really appreciate the fact that this is both a practical and an aspirational document. And when we talk about transportation planning, we have to do both. We have to be practical. We have to be able to move people to where they're going, between their jobs, their homes, and their activities in a much more efficient way than we have been. And we have to do that yesterday. And so we have to be, pragmatic about that. But we also have to be aspirational. We'll never achieve the big regional opportunities unless we start talking about them, unless we start putting them forward, unless we, put it on the board and initiate that conversation. I really do think that after the really good work of colleagues on the Transportation and Environment Committee, we're moving in that direction. And I think that that's really exciting. And I really do think that this is something that we can all rally around, both, what do we do today to move people better, faster, more efficiently, to get to where they need to go and grow our economy and improve quality of life and sustain our environment, and how do we build for the future? How do we make sure that we are creating the type of regional connectivity that we have lacked for so long? I remember a conversation not too long ago when we were at this dais, which we've now returned to, thankfully, about the magic wand. And I have often asked the magic wand, and in fact, I believe I was provided a physical, actual, and not just proverbial magic wand. But I was asked in response to my question of the magic wand, what would my magic wand be? And the ability to move efficiently through quality transit, not just within Montgomery County, but throughout the region from and to Montgomery County on single-seat trips. That is the magic wand. That is the answer. And this document now, I really do believe, both has the current moment and the magic wand option for the future. And I think we need that. I think this helps move us in that direction. And I just appreciate all the work in getting us there. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Great comments, colleagues. I'll note that Chairman Anderson's comments about Dr. Erlin were on videotape, and so he can refer to those whenever he wants to, whenever he's having a bad day. But thank you all. This was extraordinarily impressive, and I really appreciate the committee's work and obviously the staff's work. The collaboration is so important, and setting these visions for all of us are more than half the battle, because it gets people excited. It starts to drum up political will. It starts to drum up momentum, and doing nothing isn't going to do any of that. And so obviously there's important conversations about how any of this will be paid for in the future. And they are complicated conversations that will change between administrations. But what's clear is we have to move these projects forward in some form or fashion. And you all have laid a vision that is exciting, that's tangible, and that one that this and future councils need to work towards. So thank you all very much for joining us this morning. Still morning. No, afternoon. All right, colleagues, we are now going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our consent calendar.
Mr. President?
Oh,
can I
sorry,
ask,
Dr. Orland?
Is there, this is a work session, is this a consensus that council that you're agreeing with the committee recommendation?
Yes, by acclamation, colleagues. Yep. Yes.
Thank you. We'll come back to you with our adoption resolution in a few weeks.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. All right. We now have the consent calendar before us. I know at least one colleague would like to speak to the consent calendar. Before we get to that, though, can I get a motion to move the consent calendar forward?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Hucker, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. And Councilmember Navarro, I believe you wanted to speak to the consent calendar.
Thank you so much. I do. I want to just bring everybody's attention to items 6R, 6S, and 6T on the consent calendar. And I do want to thank the Joint Committees, Education and Culture, as well as HHS, for a very productive session to talk about this particular proposal, which I have shared with all my colleagues. This is a proposal to begin an interim phase of expanding wellness centers to all high schools. This obviously, it's something that this entire council has considered to be a priority for many years. However, the last 2 years, as we all have discussed, have come to absolutely turn our world upside down, and we have seen the devastating effect that this pandemic has had on the emotional and mental health of our young people, of our students in MCPS, as well as, of course, the faculty and parents. And unfortunately, we have all been dismayed at reports of suicides among our young people. There was a shooting in my district at Magruder High School, something that we had never experienced in Montgomery County. And time again, when we hear from those who work with our youth, those teachers, parents, what we hear time and time again is that the sustained stress, the social isolation, the grief around loss that many of our young people have experienced during the pandemic has exacerbated quite a lot of issues and put so much pressure on our students. And so this particular proposal, it's not the complete wellness center type model that we have in some high schools, Wheaton High School being one of them, but it's an interim effort to give the school system as well as HHS the opportunity to start building up the capacity, but more than anything is to provide a safe space for our students to be able to go to and be heard, be seen, be comforted, really truly not have to jump through so many hoops to try to access that type of support, but that it is embedded within the school. And so I first want to thank Dr. McKnight, the Board of Education, for their absolute collaboration. I think today we celebrate the spirit of collaboration. They have been amazing. And you see here that one of the appropriations that is in the consent calendar came from MCPS, and this is for them to augment the procurement of portables for this effort. You also will see an appropriation for HHS for operating dollars, but also to be able to retrofit some of the internal spaces to begin this work The Department of Health and Human Services. Also, I want to thank Dr. Kroll and all of their amazing staff, Ms. Dira Trent-Vance, who has worked so hard on these issues. I also want to thank the leadership of the PTA. Their mental health subcommittee has been amazing. We have had so many conversations also with stakeholders, and we have heard from our young people, especially during this particular time. Lastly, I will say that, the leadership of Councilmember Rice, Chair of the Education and Culture Committee, and Council President Albornoz is also important to recognize, because this has been an ongoing, I think, all hands on deck effort to respond to many of these particular issues. Councilmember Glass in the past has also been, constantly reminding us of the need of social workers, for example, in the schools. And so this is a shared desire. And again, this particular ambitious proposal is one of those that I often say, in times of crises, there is nothing more important than bold response and immediate response. And we know that we're still in a time of crises. And so I thank everyone. I know consent calendar, we usually don't talk so much, but this $8 million special appropriation that the joint committees have already agreed to support is the beginning of this effort. There is also, of course, a proposal for the long-term, efforts that we're going to need to undertake to really strengthen these wellness centers, et cetera. But it's important to start now. Lastly, shout out to the Street Outreach Network, which I'm now rebranding as School Outreach Networks. But, that kind of youth workers embedded in the schools is so important. Oftentimes, and I have heard this directly from our young people, they may not feel comfortable even approaching a counselor or a social worker. But you know what? They do feel comfortable approaching a youth worker that they feel they can connect with on that level. And that is so important in this particular moment. So thank everyone. I think that this is something that will go a long way, but it is not like we're done. It's just the beginning, and it's a way to respond again to something that we consider to be a crisis moment within our young people in our schools. And hopefully we'll be able to do something for our middle schools, because we are also hearing a lot of issues affecting our middle schools. So hopefully we can work together on that as well. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Well said. Councilmember Friedson.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Councilmember Navarro, for your leadership on that, and Council President for your partnership on item F. I just wanted to note this is a $450,000 special appropriation, and Councilmember Navarro was supposed to be listed as a co-sponsor, so I just wanted to note that. For the record, I will have plenty of time to thank everybody as part of this effort. It's a really important focus on ensuring that everybody in our community has access to preventative care in a culturally competent way, and so we'll be talking about that more later, but just wanted to note the co-sponsorship. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And just on that quickly, these funds are being matched by a private foundation, which has an expiration date. All the more reason it's an opportunity for us to leverage county resources and address a lot of need that we know is out there. All right. Thank you, colleagues. We have a motion and a second to accept the consent calendar. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
I vote yes.
All right. As that is unanimous among all those here and virtual. So with that, colleagues, we now are adjourned until 1:30. Thank you.
Life-enhancing decisions. All of our programs are free to the community. We host free events, pop-up events.